Good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, June 8th, and this is a school board briefing meeting. And we are starting out with reports from our school board advisory committees. Hopefully everybody's here, but we'll see. We'll be flexible on this. Do we have someone here from the Construction Advisory Committee to give the report?
Oh, here he is.
Oh. So, and each of you who are giving reports, if you would introduce yourself when you get to the microphone. So, thank you.
That's not on.
Is that on? We need it on, please.
I thought they were doing it from right here.
Okay.
Nope.
Oops.
There we go.
You need to have the lights on because people can't see.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Atkins and staff and members of the public. My name is Ryan Richards. I'm this year's chairman of the Construction Advisory Committee. And I'd like to start by saying, you can mix it up once in a while. I don't always have to go first.
Well, I could reverse the alphabetical order, but C-O-N-S happens to come before C-O-N-T. So it's you, but maybe I'll surprise you next time.
Thank you. I look forward to that. So we've essentially had 2 meetings since my last report, April and May. And our April meeting presented largely talking about some of the continuing contracts requirements, in that if firms that provide either surveys or studies regarding to a potential project, should they be excluded from the participating in the RFQ of the actual project. There was some discussion back and forth, and it does not seem to have been the district's approach in the past that they would be excluded, but our committee essentially unanimously voted that they should not be disqualified from the RFQ process if you provide something like a feasibility study or a survey. Otherwise, firms would not be willing to provide feasibility studies and surveys. It seemed to resonate with a lot of other school districts around the state of Florida, and the presentation we had on that seemed pretty clear, and we'd like to formally make that recommendation that they should not be excluded. One of the caveats that was discussed was if there was a project leader or a team member that was a direct contact for the survey or for the study, they should potentially not be part of the voting team, because there may be some relationships or personal contacts that happened in that regard. So, maybe you pull out that one major contact, and then let all the firms proceed accordingly. That would seem to be relatively unanimous request by the board, by the committee. I apologize. And moving on, we did have an update on the virtual meetings. Seems to be on again, off again type of situation, so that's an update every month. And then going into the construction updates, we did get some information on the new schools and their potential groundbreaking. We had talked about subjects for the coming year. Now that we're in recess and will not be starting again until September. There was some input from the committee that they'd like to be involved in the innovation schools when that comes around. Would also like to be involved in any potential land purchases. I know it's been a little light lately, and I apologize for the wording in the report, and when it says shortage of knowledgeable staff, I really should just say shortage of staff. There's been some departures and some people leaving. I don't want that to be construed as a dig or anything like that. There's just been some turnover at those positions. And then again, on the local interlocal agreements, Ms. Morgan gave a presentation or a discussion of who she's talking to with the county and trying to smooth out the process in the future. I think foresight of them seeing it come down the road is going to be a really big point of discussion. But keeping those conversations regular, we feel is something that really should have been done for a number of years in that regard. And then we also did ask to start looking at the pre-K-8 that's being done in Estero. And Mr. Rickenbacker was nice enough to set that up for us at our May meeting. So May was a long meeting. We had a lot on the agenda. Ms. Morgan again updated us on the interlocal agreements, and then reaching out, and we'd love to be able to help should something become fruitful from those agreements. The existing ones vary in dates and ages, and they're anywhere between 4 pages and 40 pages depending on how old they are. So kind of standardizing them, and I think that the county interlocal would be the template for all the other smaller municipalities. We ran into a presentation of the AAAA pre-K 8 school in Estero. Talked to the architects on that. Harvard Jolly kind of walked us through the floor plan. A lot of back and forth on the rationality of why things are the way they are, where they're located, why they're located there. Discussions quite a bit of getting traffic off of Three Oaks Parkway and getting them on site quickly. And there's still some, intricate wayfinding that's going to be associated with that, where conflicts occur, and then there's still is essentially one way in and out, but trying to get as much as that on site and then direct people to properly maneuver where they should be maneuvering. We had talked about the RFQ selection criteria at great length this year, and we had a recommendation put forth by one of our members, procedurally asked for by us, is there anything else in the procedure that we just didn't felt was really addressed by the last review that we had with procurement. So we got a number of answers, and the next part of the report, I just want to clarify that the strike-through fonts, there's a little bit of a confusion, at least in the wording, when you say like motion passes having 0, but the motion is to reject the comment. So that was just kind of like a little point of clarity. If it had a strike through, there was an approved motion to not follow through with the comment, and that's what that's trying to convey in the actual reports. But some of the recommendations we would like to move forward with include extending the 7-year past experience requirement to something like 10 years. And I know we've been talking about this for a number of years, so it really wouldn't be much of a change. It would be just kind of holding that same status quo. We thought that would open it up a little bit. And on the RFQ references, we like them to hold them on for 2 years. When batches of RFQs come out, they are kind of onerous on other clients. I know a number of other districts and other jurisdictions have stopped giving references because they all come in at once, and there's a number of them, and they're time consuming. So, some jurisdictions have stopped giving them out altogether, so the longer you can hold on to these and keep them on record, the easier it would be for the firms in general to go and get. We hold on to those for 2 years, trying to find my place, scratch through. And I think at the end of the day, that was really the only recommendations we were going to make a motion and pass. I did want to follow back up. I think I may have missed one item in our April meetings, and that's specific to the continuing services contracts. Someone had brought up the idea that the actual presentations after submitting a book on a continuing services contract, it takes a considerable amount of resources, and firms that get selected or win may not actually get any work out of it in the next 2 years, because there's a number of firms that end up on it, and depending on the number of projects, they may not get work. On the design side, it's a little less problematic, but on the contractor side, you might have 15 firms there and 12 projects. So there's amount of resources that are expended on them, and what's the value really when there isn't a project to talk about? It's just, the presentation has to be tailored around, we know stuff, because we don't have a project, we don't have a schedule, we don't have a scope. So the recommendation from our committee was, take the books, score them, how you score them, how you've been scoring them, and just go with that ranking. And that seemed to go over well with the committee at large, and just not waste that expenditure. You know, whoever had the best book gets number one, second best, number two. Create your list that way, and just kind of save that expenditure. And that was kind of a real popular opinion. And with that, I think I have covered all of our items.
Yeah, the only caveat coming forward is for all of those RFQ changes and recommendations for continuing contracts. We want to run it by procurement first to make sure we're meeting statute. So we'll get their input over the summer, and then in the fall when we reconvene our first meeting, we will schedule a briefing and then hopefully an action meeting in conjunction with procurement to make these changes that have been recommended, if it's possible, through procurement to do that.
And it should be noted that these were just done, not just a couple months ago, so none of this would take effect for another 3 years anyway, so.
Mr. Richard, very, very thorough report. I just want to be sure that we're all clear. You're bringing forward official recommendations to the board on 2 or 3 different items.
I think there's technically 4, if you want me to
4.
to quickly summarize.
Yeah, because I'm looking, and there's one when you were talking about the
This-
RFQ process, and it passed 7-0. I just want to be clear on exactly
Right.
which
That's
things
kind
are.
of the rationale for my, some of the strike-through fonts. We only approved a couple items out of the list that was requested to look at. It's essentially 2 items in April. One is not to exclude continuing services contracts or people that provide surveys from the actual RFQ when it comes out. And then the second one was to not necessarily require actual presentations or that second stage of the RFQ process for continuing services contracts. Only, correct. So that would be, you know, architectural, roofing, contractors. Just those continuing services contracts, we wouldn't recommend meeting the presentation aspect of that RFQ. And then in our...
You know,
I'm sorry?
I think it would just be helpful, the
Kind of bullet
ones,
point 'em?
the ones that if you could specifically send the official recommendations, because we as a board want to take each of your committee's official recommendation, and it could be not just from this last couple meetings, but throughout the year, and, you know, look at them
Understood, that makes sense. There's a
carefully.
lot in here that doesn't apply. Pulling out the 3 or 4 things we're actually requesting needs to be clearer. So there's a kind of a report of what happened and then a report of what we're recommending. And absolutely, I'll follow up with that.
Yeah, just to make it clear which ones you are officially sending to us as a school board so that we can
Understood.
take a look at each one of those. And Miss Morgan's going to speak, and I forgot to mention, Miss Patrica, are you on the line?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to call on Miss Morgan since she's the liaison, and then anybody who has additional questions.
Well, I think there's a little bit of confusion. Yes, the committee has absolutely agreed that they want to bring this forward to the board. But we also agree that it's got to be run by staff to identify any problems that they may have with it before it's brought forward to the board. And then the idea, as Mr. Rickenbacker said, would be to do a briefing on it with staff. And I don't believe there are any legal issues involved. There may be one, the feasibility, I'm not sure, feasibility studies may be one. So really, it's just a matter of letting us know, informing us what changes they are making in process in the administration. Wouldn't necessarily be policy. One might be. So I think that's where we are.
Okay, and I wasn't sure if the recommendations, I was thinking of it the other way around, that the recommendations would come to us and we'd say, here are the recommendations, staff, would you before we seriously consider, would you take a look
Well,
at those?
I guess we could do that. It's just that
Either way.
it's a multiple-step process.
The intent was to get all of our departmental staff to review and concur,
Yeah.
then bring it to you guys as a recommendation for your approval or not.
Right.
That works too, whatever works smoothly, but we love to have our committees, that's why you guys are out there coming up with these great ideas, and so however many you have. Was there anything else you wanted to add before I ask people to ask your questions?
No, I think we've summarized it really well, and, you know, the point is well taken that we'll summarize and listen to a clear, concise list of requesting, you know, you look at these changes, and we'll work with district staff, and then, you know, what comes out of that, we're going to bring it forward.
Sounds perfect. Did you want to add something
Yeah.
before I? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Richards and Mr. Rickenbacker. It's been a good committee. They've done some good work. Sometimes it's hard to corral everybody and get them to, excuse me, get to the, do the spell check or whatever. But it's been a good committee. It's working hard, and I think they're working to the best interest of the district and the contractors and the construction people who are involved on the committee. So thank you both.
And before you exit, I saw a couple hands. Ms. Gittens, and then, is your hand raised too, Ms. Jordan?
Yeah, I just had a
Okay, Ms.
comment.
Gittens, and then Ms. Jordan.
Okay, thank you, first of all, to you and the committee, and for volunteering your time to the district. My question, and it may be for Mr. Rickenbacker, the CIP process that was presented to us a few weeks ago, showing how, you know, we would progress through a project, has that been presented to this group for their perusal or input as well?
No, not as yet. The CIP is the programmed jobs from various schools with their input yearly. So it has not been presented to the CAC, but I'm sure they would love to see what the projected jobs would be for that fiscal year.
Well, and I'm just looking, and maybe I'm calling it the wrong thing, but the process that we would go through from that you guys sat here and told us about, the, you know, we're from start to finish.
Correct. We have not gotten a presentation on that. My construction process really has remained unchanged from the time the football was given to me. I think the process document that you saw showed a lot of the front end with community involvement until they get to me. So they're pretty well versed in what I have to do from start to finish, but we could certainly use a briefing on how we get to that point with all the front end community work. Which is in the
I'm
process.
just thinking that, and they can say yay or nay, but I think that would be a good set of eyes to add to that. He mentioned a couple of times things about, you know, involving this one and that one, so just a suggestion to
Correct,
put it.
and they really want to get involved. They want to definitely look at any ILA agreements we get prior to it coming to you board for ratification. They want to look at it with their professional eyes as well. So I know they're working in both legal and planning now, creating some revision language for ILAs, and I would hope that we can set up a time for them to come in and review them with the staff on the CAC committee to kind of take a look and put a pair of eyes and comment as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Jordan?
I just wanted to say thank you for the detailed report. I really appreciate that. And as far as recommendations, though, I thought it was the liaisons who, after they've decided what the committees have done, that they are the ones, we bring that back to the board, not the, I mean, they're sharing the information, but it's
Right.
us who would bring it back to the board. But thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just need it to be clear, just for the sake of listening to the report. Ms. Patrica, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Anybody else on the dais? Okay, thank you again, Mr. Richards. Next is Continuous Systemic Improvement Advisory Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Stork sends her apologies. She is unable to be here today, so you have me instead. We've had 2 meetings since our last report. The first one was in April, and we had two main topics in April. The first was Mrs. Gittens did a thorough review of topics that the board had been discussing over the past few months, and asked for input from the members, and reminded them that they were free to email or contact board members with their concerns. The other item that we discussed in April was how the board members, the advisory committee members would like to receive information about the strategic plan and ideas they had for distributing information about the strategic plan throughout the district and to stakeholders. So they had several ideas there. Unfortunately, in our May meeting, we were not able to approve those minutes, but we did not have a quorum for our May meeting, a fiscal quorum. But there were lots of suggestions, so we will be providing those suggestions to the Communications Department and Academic Services Department, since most of them were mainly fell around those two areas. We also agreed to be part of signing a letter that went to our senator to encourage the passage of the bill that would allow committees to meet without having a physical quorum. And so we believe that's going into effect, so we're happy about that. Unfortunately, it did not go into effect in time for our May meeting, so we were unable to do any of our official business in May. We were not able to make official recommendations. However, we did have a good discussion, and Mrs. Gittens was able to show the group the superintendent search webpage, and they were very impressed with that and were excited about that. So we will meet again in September, and we are very pleased. It's been a great group. I will say, as the liaison, this group has just been wonderful to work with this year. They've had great ideas. They've stayed focused and on task, and I believe Ms. Gittens will agree with me on that. We've just been really fortunate to have our members this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McClung. Anybody have a question or comment for her?
As the liaison, may I make?
If you, sure.
Okay. And I agree with Ms. McClung. It was a very, they are very enlightened. They know exactly what the topics are and come with thoughts and ideas and questions. And I did share with you as a board before thoughts that they had about the superintendent search process, and I did mention that on the board before. I have enjoyed working with them. Like I said, very good ideas, enlightening ideas, and I just, wish them all the best, and they have a great group. And thank you for all the work that you do too, Cindy, with them.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question or comment? Okay, seeing none, let's move to Curriculum Advisory Committee representative. Whatever is more convenient, Bethany.
See if it works. Oh, it does. Good afternoon. My name is Bethany Quisenberry. I'm Director for Elementary Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm one of the liaisons for the Curriculum Advisory. Our chair and our co-chair were unable to attend. So we kind of had the same problem as what Ms. McClung was speaking to, and we are very excited that we're able to offer a virtual option going forward. Our March meeting, unfortunately, we were unable to have a quorum, so we were unable to complete that meeting. Our April meeting, we also were unable to have a quorum face-to-face, but we knew enough in time, ahead of time, to be able to offer a Zoom virtual option, so we were able to have an unofficial meeting for April. In our April meeting, we discussed, I gave a presentation on the best standards implementation for kindergarten to second grade, which included the professional development plan for our K-2 teachers, for how we are ensuring that they are trained effectively on those new standards moving into next school year, and then what will the ongoing plan be for professional development for onboarding new teachers moving into next school year. We also reviewed the plan for 3rd to 12th grade for the best standards, and when they receive their new curriculum materials for ELA moving into not this coming school year but the following school year, and what how we could help to develop that plan plan. We also discussed the professional development plan for the best standards for 3rd to 12th grade moving forward once those implementations are made. Ms. Fisher, our board liaison, spoke to us about the interim superintendent process as well. And then she also gave an update on our health and social and emotional support for the upcoming school year. Moving into next school year, we do not have any additional meetings until the fall, but moving into the fall, we will be a very busy advisory committee as we have another big textbook adoption moving into next school year. We will adopt math curriculum for K to 12, and then we will begin a tighter process for implementing the best standards, not just for ELA, but for ELA and math all the way through 12th grade. So. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Quisenberry. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Fisher?
Thank you. Yes, I just want to compliment Dr. Quisenberry and the whole team for the work that they've done on the standards and planning for the curriculum, and especially for the professional development and the onboarding of new teachers. So I think we're in good shape for next year, and it was an honor to be the liaison to Curriculum Advisory Committee once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a side note, we have already trained all of our kindergarten, first and second grade teachers in the best standards this school year, and we have also already provided training for K to 5 and all of the Wonders trainings. That's the new ELA curriculum, so we're in a really good place moving into next school year.
Yeah, and you'll definitely have some work to do next year. I was the board liaison a couple years ago for the ELA reading adoptions, and I know there's a plethora of things to look at in the adoption years.
Yes, one more side note, if you are out at any elementary schools in this week or maybe even into next week, ask them to see all the boxes of all of the new curriculum that has come in. So we were very fortunate that we were able to get those orders complete, that the board approved that purchase, and we were able to get those orders complete early so that all of our teachers have all of their materials already at their schools, and they're busy unpacking and ensuring that they have all of their materials that they're able to review over the summer if they choose for next school year.
Thank you, Dr. Quisenberry. And for any of you people who believe that teachers are ready to go on summer vacation, I guarantee with the new textbooks, all the teachers will be spending, they all, even if there's not a new textbook, they're spending a lot of time reviewing and tweaking things, but with the new textbook, there'll be a lot of hours put in. So I just wanted to put it out there because,
very true.
Yeah, it's summer break, but it's not totally a vacation. Yes. Did I see another? Ms. Fisher?
I just wanted to conclude by saying the whole academic services team is so well prepared and so proactive that, they kind of made me feel like I needed to work a little harder. So thank you again.
Anybody else have a question or comment? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And do we have a district advisory council representative?
Good afternoon, board members. Jeff Spiro. Our chair is Scott Hertz, and it looks like Mr. Hertz is not here this afternoon, so I'm prepared to give an update in our last two meetings that we had. We had a meeting back in March and April. In both of those meetings, there was not a quorum, but we did have informational sessions that were available for all of our DAC members. Our March meeting was Brian Mangan and the Student Services team. They came in and provided an overview of the Code of Conduct to elicit feedback from our DAC members. That was in the March meeting. April was our culmination, and that was Roger Lloyd came and talked about transportation. And I want to tip my hat to Roger Lloyd, who took 2 hours of questions from our entire DAC family. We were in one room for that evening. It was right here in the boardroom. He really did an amazing job listening to what the community was giving him as feedback, and as a result of that, they are preparing a one-pager that'll go out to all families during the back-to-school open houses that'll have things such as, how do I request a bus change? How do I know if my child's bus is on time? All of those questions that parents normally have They're going to be preparing a one-pager that'll go out district-wide. And of course, as you'll always hear Mr. Hertz talk about, they talk about actionable steps with our DAC team, and that's just another example of our presentations that have resulted in some sort of action. Our board liaison is Ms. Patrica, and in our March meeting, Ms. Patrica talked about reaching out to the legislators, giving her feedback as well, and then in our April meeting talked about our superintendent search and providing feedback also. So we want to thank Ms. Patrica for her service to DAC. And that is her final update.
Thank you, Dr. Spiro. Are there questions or comments for Dr. Spiro? Ms. Gittens.
The question, you mentioned that in one of your meetings, you discussed the code of conduct. Were there suggestions, questions, and all that relayed back to the board before we got to the point we're at now?
Yes, all of that was provided before the first reading came to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who else? Ms. Patrica, did you have any comments?
No, thank you. I believe Dr. Spiro nailed it.
That's good. Anybody else? Thank you again, Dr. Spiro.
Thank you very much.
And next, Equity and Diversity, Edac Advisory Committee.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, board members, Dr. Atkins, Ms. Dupuy-Bruno. Jared Eady representing Chair Dennis Quisenberry, who could not join us this afternoon. The committee met in the month of April and received reports from Lori Brooks and Mary Lynn Rodriguez related to mental health services and supports for our students. The topics included universal social emotional learning for students, additional teacher resources specific to COVID, and also training provided for school staff related to mental health services. In addition to that, committee members inquired and raised questions about students' concerns and well-being after the trauma of COVID, resources for dealing with COVID-19 trauma for students and school personnel, and funding for additional licensed mental health professionals. In the month of May, the Human Resources team presented information to the EDAC committee related to teacher recruitment, including current trends in education, the closing of colleges of education across the state and nation, reduced number of college of education graduates, the lack of education job fairs provided through the colleges and university, and also recently through the COVID-19 pandemic, poor attendance of virtual education job fair events. Additionally, the HR team discussed with the committee district initiatives as well as survey results over the course of this academic year, and rounded out with recruitment and retention strategies, conversation about the ending of relocation assistance, and discussing new ideas for teacher retention, including district-wide mentoring programs, social support groups, and housing programs. The HR team did allow the members of the committee to break up into small groups to digest that presentation. Also in the month of April, Board Member Vice Chair Ms. Betsy Vaughn provided information to the committee relative to the interim superintendent search, and that information is provided to the members of the committee as updates are available. Going forward, the committee has scheduled a final meeting for the month of June to consider their presentations for the year and offer any applicable recommendations to the board for their consideration. That is our report, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Eady. And as the board liaison, I can say that this is a committee that I really enjoy being a liaison with. I know all the committees have great contributions, but as a person who was an English teacher and loves conversations, the members are not shy about anything, and I think that's wonderful, because we do have good exchanges of ideas, sometimes on topics that are slightly controversial. So it's a fun and rewarding committee for me to be a part of. I appreciate your leadership, and going to ask for any comments. Anybody have comments, questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
See any? So thank you, Mr. Eady. And last but not least, Finance Advisory Committee.
My name is Darrell Teblum. I've been this year's chairman of the Financial Advisory Committee. Sad to say, we've basically been shut down from any official work this year since February. What we did in February really hasn't been voted on yet. We did try to meet in March, and during that meeting we discussed the FAC purpose. Many of our committee members brought up the audit reports and the problems that we found within the audit to bring forward. But again, that was an unofficial meeting, so we weren't able to vote on that one. We tried again in April, and it was a good get-together since we couldn't make quorum again. We're basically down to just a few people that have been our core for the last 5-6 years that I've been on the committee. And most of us are also up for reappointment this year at this point that are the core. We did discuss some of the updates going on at the schools and how they're keeping up with the school improvements such as AC and using CARES dollars. But again, we weren't really able to have major discussions and take action just because we couldn't have a meeting with a quorum. We were told that, I was told at our last chairs meeting that we would be able to call a meeting over the summer to hopefully at least wrap up what we did do February, March, and April for those that attended. And we look forward to coming back in September then.
Well, I'm really disappointed to hear that such an important committee has had these issues, but, you know, completely understandable, especially considering the unusual year that we've had. And I thank you for hanging in there as chair and presenting the information.
What I was going to, thank you, Daryl, really appreciate it. And what he's saying is very true, because when we went back to that you had to come in person, it dropped to 3 people. Prior to that, everybody attended every single meeting, but people were still afraid to come in here and speak on that. So they have, you know, the 3 or 4, I think we had the most was 4 who attended the second meeting. So there was conversations, as he said, and they were kind enough to look at the Booster Club manual as well as the audit, and they are sending back their response to Mr. Pre-Bruno on that. So they're working on the side without being able to have those meetings, and now that we can do both, they'll be able to move forward.
Yes, Mrs. Gittens.
Yeah, thank you for your report. And I tend to sometimes think outside the box, and as I'm looking at this group of citizens and people that are experts in their areas, and I thought of an idea that maybe once a year we can do a combined advisory meeting where they get an opportunity to speak with, like you guys are finance, so you talk with construction, and construction talk to, you know, this one, to kind of see how we all fit together and how all of the things do. And I just wanted to kind of throw that out there to see if maybe there was any interest in doing it. Maybe we can, you know, hear back from you guys. I just think hearing from a broader perspective rather than us working in silos, and we get an opportunity to see how much work all of you guys are doing and share, and maybe it will spark an idea over here that comes from here, and we just all get better for it. So I would like to throw that out as like an annual, maybe a one-day thing where everybody gets together and we have breakout rooms and we mix and mingle and talk and share. Maybe have one issue that is the concern, not concern, but issue that's on the table, and kind of see how we collectively come up with, you know, thoughts or concern, you know, issues about that. So just throwing it out there. So.
That's
actually did that.
yeah, it's an interesting idea.
We had the chairman of the construction committee come to our meeting before, and hopefully he'll agree that that was a pretty good meeting, where he was able to lend his expertise, and we were able to discuss things with him to bring back to his committee. We've brought that up several times, and hopefully we can do it again. I was hopeful to do it this year, but There were a lot of challenges with COVID in our committee.
And I know COVID was a real challenge, and even beyond just construction and finance, maybe if you all knew some of the constraints of some of the other committees, it would help you as you're thinking about, building a school or whatever, and we think about all of the things that go into it in the academics piece. So I just wanted to throw that out there and see if maybe anybody has an appetite for following up on that.
Well, it certainly sounds like an idea of merit, and perhaps we can add that to our workshop agenda, because I know, having been a board liaison now for a few years and also as a citizen member before that, there have been times when there have been presentations when two groups have gotten together and there's an exchange, but I think it definitely needs some looking into, and the logistics and our protocols and policies and all of that to make sure it all works. But again, thank you so much for carrying on, and I'm glad that there at least was some stimulating discussion, albeit with a rather small group. Any other board member questions or comments? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Dr. Atkins for his time when he came to our board over the last few years. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that concludes the section on our quarterly advisory committee reports, and of course the reports are online in board docs for anybody that wants to go back and reread. So now we move to the board procedures manual finalization. This is something we have been working on for a while, and Ms. Cindy McClung has had the auspicious job of helping us out with both this and the next topic. So, Mrs. McClung, if you would, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be back with you today. So we just have really one item left on our protocol manual, and yes, you're right, we have been working on this for quite a while. But I believe that at the last time it was brought forward, we agreed on everything except for the one area, which I believe is on page 16. It's about the process if a board member would like to bring a presentation during board member comments. And at the last meeting, the decision was made for everyone to go back and take a look at that process and think about it and make sure that that everyone understood what was involved. And basically, this is to help our communications department so that when there is a presentation during the board member comments, that they're aware of it in advance and that they are able to make sure that everything works properly prior to the meeting.
So I'm going to let you
Okay, are there any
people and
thank you.
Direct the conversation, if you don't mind.
I'll be happy to do that. Thank you very much. So are there any questions or comments regarding this section?
Ms. Patrica, are you there?
I'm here. I don't have anything right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, could we have a consensus to accept this process as presented in the protocol?
Okay.
And I see it, believe I can see everyone's thumbs. Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Thumbs up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Looks like it is unanimous.
Jordan is not here right now, but it is unanimous for everyone
Jordan's
that
not
is here.
here. So 6-0 unanimous on that.
Thank you. And that really was the only item. I did want to bring up that on page 75, there had been a question at our last meeting around protocol about the process if someone wanted to have information sent out to staff. And there, I'm sorry, I know it's probably making you dizzy because it's making me dizzy as I search through here. Page 75.
Okay.
So almost there. There'd been a question about process and considering adding something to the protocol manual about what is the process if a board member would like something sent to staff or sent to district personnel. And other board members mentioned that, well, really that's probably already covered in our protocol. So if we look at numbers 11 and 12, I think those probably do cover that. Channel any formal communications to district staff through the superintendent, and then channel any substantial requests for information or action through the board to the superintendent, and should reflect the desires of the board as a whole. So if everyone is in agreement that that covers that question, then we would not need to add anything else. I see Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Morgan.
My question about that is that I do send correspondence to schools in my area from time to time, and I've just done that. So I don't see...
I believe this was more asking staff members to send communications out. It was what the question was.
Send what out?
Was asking staff to send communications to the district or to other staff members.
Okay, because I thought that like holiday things or whatever from the board usually comes from the chair.
Yes, I believe you're correct in the holiday greetings and items like that. I believe this was more generalized information that wasn't coming directly from the board.
I guess I'm confused because I've never, I don't understand what this is in reference to, people sending out. I mean, I haven't sent anything, to my knowledge, out to all of the staff.
No, it wasn't a matter of sending things directly to staff. I believe there have been times when a board member has asked that communications be sent out to the staff rather than all of them from all of the board, but the question came from a particular board member at different times. So they just wanted to clarify that if a board member would like information to be sent, that should go through the superintendent. If it's something is being sent from the whole board, such as a greeting card at Christmas, that would be a different situation. Ms. Morgan, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I think the issue for me is that, yes, this is in our procedure and it tells us what we should or shouldn't do, but it doesn't protect staff. And so the issue is empowering staff to say no to a staff member, and that's one issue. The second issue is this. We have become a really large organization, and we are learning that sometimes things are going out without the superintendent's knowledge or without our knowledge. And so we really do need to tighten up what gets communicated publicly, on a district-wide basis. And so that's my concern. Those are the two comments.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli and then Ms. Fisher.
And I would agree with that. Actually, I was going to add to Ms. Morgan's comments. We're not even getting the copies. Like, it's being sent out to everybody, but then we don't even know that it went out. Like, it could come back to us as, a copy through someone else. Not even, the board's not even receiving a copy. So I think it's important to really tighten this up somehow. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher.
Yeah, so as we're looking at our protocols, this is for the board, I think it's really important when messages go out from a board member that if it is not on behalf of the whole board, that's stated. Because I believe yesterday Mrs. Morgan made a comment that part of our problem is, and this is leading into our next section, is that we are to speak as a board. So we need to be in agreement about what we're going to present to the public and to staff. And so we need to all be aware of that. And we don't operate on individual agendas. That's just not even legal. So I think that's something that we do need to take a look at moving forward.
Thank you. So is there any suggestion, I heard tightening up, to change this language, or is it just a matter of people actually following through on the protocol? And remembering that if you want something sent to district staff, if you're asking a staff member to send something out, then that should go through the board, through the superintendent's office. Ms. Morgan?
Yes, I have a question. Does staff have a protocol with respect to a formal way to handle direct requests, recommendations, suggestions from board members that they distribute information? Do board members have, do staff have a protocol? This is our protocol.
To the best of my knowledge, I believe that most staff members, if asked to do something by a board member, would do that.
Yep.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, and I'm going to add that there are exceptions to this, and they're actually approved by the superintendent. Examples, all of us have had specific projects. For instance, when I was working on census, for instance, and established, here are the people I've been working with, and instead of telling the board every little thing we're doing, work with those people and then just give a report to the board. So that doesn't need to be written in there, but just, again, all of us have had those kinds of projects where it's a given that we're going to not send every request to our various committee members. So that's helpful too for those of us when we're in those situations.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's just a matter of remembering to go through the superintendent when you're requesting something be sent to staff, and maybe a reminder to our directors and our staff members that if you do receive a request from a board member, to make sure that it's been approved through the superintendent's office before you follow through. And again, most most staff members are not going to question a request from the board, but sometimes we might need to just send a reminder that this is the protocol, and if you're not sure it's been followed, that it's fine to ask the superintendent's office if that protocol has been followed. If everyone is in agreement with that, can I see a thumbs up? Ms. Gittens, I'm sorry, I can't see your hand. Thank you. All right, thank you. With that, we've concluded the protocol piece of today's meeting.
I have a quick question, if I may.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
She said.
I thought you said Ms.
Yeah,
Ms.
you
Morgan
came
was
in after I said Ms. McClung's going to be calling on people, so.
Thank you.
Welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this came to me yesterday while we were sitting through our action agenda review portion of yesterday's meeting. And if I may ask Attorney Dupree-Bruno, I think that the process I follow, but I don't see it written down anywhere, the process I follow is if I have questions, I get them to staff 24 hours in advance, at least, at a minimum, preferably the Friday before, but I get them to them 24 hours in advance. I don't see that written in here anywhere, and I know that none of these policies are law, none of these protocols are law, and there's no way to hold each other accountable for them, but it's basically an agreement that the 7 of us enter into with the understanding that we will do our best to follow them. There are occasions where things come up last minute and it can't be done, but I'm seeing sort of repeated moving away from protocols with those meetings in particular, and also with polls. I believe it says that we're supposed to poll at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting and provide a memo explaining why. And again, I understand that sometimes last minute things happen and that protocol might have to be violated, but when it occurs on a repeated basis, I wonder whether we need to discuss those and determine whether we want to change them or just recommit to following them. And does that language regarding action agenda review portion of workshop need to be placed in the protocol?
I think it would be best to put it in the protocol so that everybody's on the same playing field and understands it.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I know you thought you were done, but again, this struck me yesterday. So
Let me reassure you that I never believe I'm finished. So, no, I agree. That process it has not been placed in protocol. I believe the process was developed with the board and either Ms. Schaefer or Ms. Stillwell, so one of them may have an actual process written down, so I will check with them first. My understanding of that process is that board members are asked to put questions in by the Friday before the meeting, if at all possible, and then that gives staff over the weekend to provide those answers before Monday's meeting. Does that sound correct? Okay, so is everyone in agreement that we should add that piece to the protocol? Okay, I'll be happy to go back and get that and add that and bring that forward to you. Thank you. Is that a question,
I'm
Ms.
not voting no,
Giovanelli?
it's a question. So it's kind of difficult if on Monday we're asking for questions and we don't get the answers. Like I had to do a poll today, that wasn't 24 hours because I didn't get the information yesterday, but they were just getting the information. So, I mean, I understand then maybe we need to be having our meetings on Friday instead of Monday for the agenda review and so forth, because that's where it's arising that's less than 24 hours typically. And so, you know.
If they receive the question on Friday, you should have the answer on Monday, which would be more than 24 hours because the meetings occur before 6 p.m. on Monday. So if you were not satisfied with that answer on Monday afternoon, that would still give you a 24 hours advance notice of a poll, correct?
I understand the 24-hour thing. The problem is, you know, we're busy. We're doing things. I'm busy. I can't get to it. My quiet time is usually on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday at 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, or really it's Monday morning. So, I mean, I can't commit to that completely because I'm busy. I have a lot going on. So I do a job. I think I'm the only one on the board other than Debbie that has a job, another real job. So it's difficult for me to squeeze things in. You know, I'm doing it at the time I have available. So I can't commit to that, just for the record.
I just want to clarify, you can't commit to the Friday timeline? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Getting your
Thank you.
questions in by Friday? Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah,
Ms. Vaughn.
Okay, first of all, this is a living document, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
it is. It's a living document, and I think that this might be another workshop topic, because we used to have those agenda reviews on Fridays.
Yes.
And what Ms. Giovanelli brings up is a good point, because I know more than once, a question that I've asked on Monday, you know, a lot of people think, okay, so asked and answered, but that doesn't mean because something's answered, it doesn't mean you agree with it. As a matter of fact, if there's been a case or two when after I've heard the answer, I was not in agreement with it because all my doubts were answered in a way a negative way. So I really think it would be a good discussion, because I know things then that I've said, well, I'm going to pull. I've had the last minute, I hate to call it an onslaught, but kind of almost an onslaught of people visiting me in my office to, well, answer questions, but sometimes I think it's just to try to change my mind. And so it just sounds to me like it's something that we need to revisit. And
the timing of that
I'm not
meeting.
sure how the rest of the board would feel about that, Ms.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
Yeah.
And just for the record, so I attempted to do my agenda. I had part of it written on Thursday evening. Then I didn't get back to it until like literally in the middle, you know, like Sunday morning or Monday morning, actually. So, and then I kind of thought I messed it up, which I didn't, but that's because I was doing it in the middle of the night. But anyways, that's irrelevant. What I'm noticing also is that the agenda is changing things are being pulled and changed throughout that time frame as well. So when does the agenda cease and not change? Because that sometimes throws things off when I was forming my questions, and then it gets pulled, an item or disappears or changed, and you can see that on our emails how things are, the board docs have changed, there's something changed or whatever, even if it's just a word, but it still changes. So that's a little bit, how does one handle that? So.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
And I'm not sure about that, but I just know that it has, if a word changes, because of the fact that we have to make sure that it's out there in the public with the right verbiage, it's going to change. So and it could be up to the very last minute because of the fact that that is an ongoing thing where, and Jen's not here, and I'm just talking, I don't even know if I'm saying what I'm supposed to be saying, but it is normally, if they get a change of verbiage, they have to redo the whole thing, unfortunately.
Right, so, so that's done at the last minute as well. So, how do you force others to do things at the last minute, or you can't say that you can't? So, that's, so, how do you, that's my question, how do you deal with that? And right now, I had someone call me about the code of conduct this morning saying, well, it's not posted. I said, well, maybe it's being pulled because they were making changes, but doesn't have to be out there. So I didn't, and they were trying to look at it. So I didn't have time to even go and see what they were talking about. So, and maybe they just didn't know where they were looking in the right place. I don't even know, but I said, I know there's some changes being made because I've had numerous phone calls regarding that. So, that's why I raised that question, is that the time is an issue.
Thank you. So it sounds like this needs to come back for further discussion in regards to when is the best time to have that agenda review meeting. In the meantime, I will bring forward to protocol, and the date may change, or the day of the week may change, but the process would basically be the same. So I'll find out that process, bring that back, and bring that to you. Thank you. Ms. Fisher.
So I was just looking at the protocol manual, which is 81 pages. And I'm wondering, out of the expectations that are delineated in the different sections, how much of that do we actually use? Because I frankly, even after all these years, I don't know them all by heart. And I think that if we isolate the ones that are very important, like the agenda review, and I think the pre-review as a group has been one of the best things that we've done over the years, because if I don't think of something, then someone else has thought of it, and we do get more information than ever from staff. So I think we have to do that in a timely fashion, and staff shouldn't be having to work on the weekend to answer our questions. So maybe if we did it a little in advance, that is another conversation. But I think that at some point we might want to think about streamlining our protocols to make them more manageable also, because you don't anticipate some of the things that we hardly ever address. So I think
yes, and several of those,
because we have policies that we have to follow.
Yes, ma'am, and some of the pages aren't protocol, some are job descriptions, but there's still probably a good 70 pages of protocol in there. So that normally we review those in November. We could certainly move that process up to whenever the board would like to do that. Normally November is when we do the major overhaul of the protocol.
And that's a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your help.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Ms. Gittens, did you have a question?
I just wanted to say, I understand protocols and policies and procedures and all that, and I think unless that we still have to be flexible. I understand about following our protocols and making sure that we're not, impinging upon someone else's job or their rights or the time that they have to do things. But I know that just like yesterday, I had a couple of things and I did not present them ahead of time, and I apologize for that. but it was simple things that I had looked through the agenda, and as I looked through it again, and something popped out at me, and I asked that question. I just think that we don't need to be so regimented that that's not allowed. There have been times that even someone has brought something up, and I've said, well, I have a question on that, and I have been told I could not speak because I didn't turn in that question. And I just think we can't regiment ourselves out of doing the work that we need to do. And I know on a couple of occasions I have said to staff, well, I just thought about this question. You don't need to give it to me right now. And just to get it out there. And again, maybe it's a question that someone else may have. And nothing against staff, or I feel the questions that are asked are pretty generic to whoever's job it is that is doing that. And that's what they do. So, it's not that they have to go back and go through reams and reams of material to find an answer. I just feel that the answers are pretty, generic. But things that, like Ms. Giminelli said, that, Giminelli, I'm thinking of Dominic, but that you hear things like, I've gotten 50 emails this morning, and we don't have another opportunity to talk about what we're going to vote on tonight. And we just got the changes to this massive thing of the Code of Conduct. So we don't have an opportunity to look at it again under different eyes the next day and putting in all the information that we have received from constituents in the community, and we have to vote on it.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I understand the rules and the rights, but sometimes we have to be flexible. Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, Ms. Jordan.
I'm just going to say, in life, everybody has to be flexible regardless, because things do come up and we do understand that. But I think that it is good to have policies and procedures and protocols, so that's a guiding tool for everybody. So that's something that we can use as a guide. And Ms. Giovanelli, it is on board docs. So just so that you know that everything is on board docs at this moment. And I know as far as the timing for questioning, we have multiple opportunities to speak to staff, get information regarding everything that will come before us. So I know sometimes it is hard to have that there before, but we have to make sure that we give people ample time to get an answer to us, so that way we can continue on and move on to whatever. And I think that the hard part is when we have a poll at the 5 minutes prior is, it's like, it doesn't matter, we're still going to do it, but that's, sometimes you don't even know because you're not looking at your computer 5 minutes before you're walking in here, and you don't even know it until you get here. So, and that's just a little bit of common courtesy as well. And that's my comments.
Thank you. So it sounds like this definitely needs to come forward again in terms of the timing of that agenda review meeting. So we will, I'll work with Ms. Schaefer, and we'll find the time to add that to your agendas. Okay, with that, I will close the protocol. And we'll move forward to the action plan around your self-evaluation. So I apologize for the lateness of today's paper. I really, over the past week, was thinking about it and said, it'll just be so much simpler if I put this in a spreadsheet rather than just try and take comments around it. So I sent you the spreadsheet. The first page is just the overview of each of those dimensions with the average score and the average grade listed there. So I took each dimension, put it on a separate page, and you'll see the last column is the average. I sorted those from the lowest item to the highest item. Obviously, when you have 6 different dimensions and around 8 to 10 items, you're probably not going to want to do that many action steps or action items. So I thought we would look at the lowest ones, and then you can decide as a board which ones do you believe are the most important to actually take an action around in order to improve that score. And it's not really about improving the score, but improving the ability to work together is really what it's all about. So to the right, you'll see that there is an action plan template. This is just a very basic one with what is the action that you're agreeing to take, whose responsibility is it to make sure that that happens, and then is there a time frame that that should occur. So if we start with the first one, the lowest in the contextual field was that the board effectively discusses the research about events and trends in the larger community that may affect schools. So is there any discussion around that item, and if you would like to work toward an action to improve that? Morgan.
I guess what I would like to see is, what does that look like? I don't know what other boards do. I mean, I think, I'm just wondering if it's a relevant question about our performance, because I believe that to the extent that we have discussions about research, it comes forward in the conversations about the district strategic plan. So, you know, I answer the question, I know we don't do it. I gave it a 2, I don't know why, but I'm just wondering, what does that look like? What are we doing when we do this, so that I know how we're evaluating ourselves?
That's a good question. Thank you.
So for me, an example is critical race theory, and I was actually going to bring that up during my board comments today. That is clearly an issue that is gaining traction in our community, and it's one that I'd like to ask staff to bring forward an explanation from an educational perspective, what it is, whether it's being taught in our schools. I mean, to me, that's an example of exactly what this is.
That's a perfect example.
Thank you. I feel like the LGBT issue was addressed too late. I feel like when that started at the staff level, we should have been briefed before action was taken by staff. To me, that's what this category is evaluating.
Thank you, because that really clarifies for me. I appreciate that.
That's just me.
No, I know, but I think that makes sense, that we should be doing that.
A perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ms. Vine?
Yeah, this is one of the indicators that I think is not well worded. Events, okay, events in the larger community. Okay, we could look at that, and I'm separating events from trends. We could separate that, for instance, is the larger community anything outside of the school district? Is it our local community, Lee County? So an example might be, a real obvious one, the effects on the community of COVID, growing hunger in the community, and things that have affected us. So that would be one thing. Trends, okay? So we have educational trends, and I agree that usually when, for instance, okay, let's say academic services is reporting to us, and I know at one point we were talking about K-8 schools versus dividing into middle schools. Well, what does the data say? So I think those kinds of reports, many of them come to us when we have the briefings. Now, when you get into other things, the critical race theory is, that's what I call a hot potato topic, because that's something that's in politics, in coming out of Tallahassee and across the nation. that certainly affects us and affects the regulations and the, the best, what do they call it? The new best,
Standard.
just standards? I thought there's another word. Okay, best standards. But some of those, for us to have a discussion, becomes, it becomes a hot potato. Perhaps we need to do training on some of these. I know, and I'm seeing a shaking head, but I say that because there's no good answer for a board to discuss some of the issues with LGBTQ, which is political. It's become political, with critical race theory and some of the other issues that have been generated by the huge gulf that we have politically in this state throughout the nation. I know personally, I wasn't sure about critical race theory, so I've done a lot of reading on it, and I've come up with my own feelings and examples about it, but I'm just not sure that the things that become these political hot button issues should be at the dais. We should be, my opinion, trained to make sure everybody understands. And then if there are things that we need to vote on that have to do with, and we had our LGBTQ training. We had quite a bit of training devoted to that. So everybody should be okay with it. But if we need training on what's meant by that, how, and certainly it affects curriculum, especially history, civics, even actually into literature. Maybe that's something academic services, that'd be fun, wants to present on, right, Dr. Spiro? Yes, I can see they would, but does that make sense what I'm saying? That
Yes, ma'am.
this whole topic, this needs to be broken down, and I think that's one of the flaws and one of the reasons why all of us rated it no higher than a 2, because we do discuss and we are trained on some of these things, but there's some things that may be just training and not discussion.
So perhaps the first step would be to identify what are those topics. So if we were looking at, I'll get right to you, Ms. Gittens. So if we were looking at what actions could be taken, perhaps the first thing would be, would there be members of the board, or how would those topics be identified that you might want more information on and how they would affect schools? Okay, Ms. Gittens.
The way I look at this, I see us getting into a whole lot of weeds and trouble if every time there is a political topic that we have to stop everything and train and learn and discuss it in public. And I'm just very concerned about political versus educational. And some of these topics, just like the critical race theory, what is our interest in it? Is our interest in letting people know what we, or me, Gwen Gittens, thinks about CRT? Or is our interest sitting up here on this dais, how is CRT going to affect the children that we represent and educate? That, to me, is the difference. So the way I would see it, and I know you're going to wish you'd left the room, Jeff, but how a topic comes out, and staff needs to let us know how, if anything, does it affect the children. And if staff presents to us, okay, there's this issue, here's how it affects children, or here's how it doesn't affect children, then we have the knowledge to move forward and decide what we need to do. But just to, it makes us look like we're just swinging the pendulum to every angle every time someone comes up with another topic. And it's going to happen on and on again. And we are going to remain in turmoil and, you know, people trying to decide, well, how do you think about it? What do you think about it? Then let them talk to us individually. That's why we have our phones and our emails and town halls and stuff that we do. But it creates sometimes dissension with this board because we do think and feel differently. And is that something that we need to put on ourselves in public on this dais? If someone wants to know how I feel, call, talk to me about it.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Ms. Fisher?
So schools are a microcosm of society, and critical race theory, to me, is world history and American history. You know, and so back in the 60s, 40, 50 years ago, people started putting academic concepts to some of these ideas as they became more popular. And these issues do come and go. And maybe I've been around too long, but, you know, like this reminds me now, this time reminds me a lot of the 60s, at which time, you know, I was an adult already. So I think that we need to, from the perspective of a board, I think we need to follow our Constitution, our laws, and our policies. And I think that we have to agree not to give personal information. I mean, different people have different feelings about racism and about LGBTQ and about all of these things that are hot topics right now. However, you know, my personal feelings and my religious concepts are not something that I feel that this is my forum to share with other people. That's my own personal business, you know. And so, and I don't feel compelled as a board member to say what my feelings are, because we have rules to follow and we are supposed to work as a governing body, not as a group of individuals with different ideals. So I think that what Ms. Gittens said, it could get out of control because things come and go, and what's a hot topic this year may not be next year, you know. So I think that we have to really proceed with caution. And yes, you know, we do get our briefings and we're informed by staff about things that do impact the kids, changes in policies and standards and requirements and funding and all of that are the things that we, I think, need to stay focused on. So, and Google is an amazing tool.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Ms. Vaughn, then Ms. Patrica.
Yeah, and yet, we have legislative committees, and since the CRT was brought up, that concept and the concept of American exceptionalism, if as board members we don't understand those, we won't be able to, we pass on evaluations of textbooks, but the standards, the best standards, the textbook makers now, they're going to hustle to put those best standards in. And that impacts us directly as a board on what our history books, what our civics books are like, and also on training, professional training of teachers. There have been teachers, I'm sure most of you are aware, that there have been teachers that are nearly crucified for different points that they make in the classroom. Well, those teachers better know if they're teaching classes in civics and in U.S. history, they better go down, they better understand what they can say and what they can't say. We had incidents not that long ago about a teacher making remarks about slavery, and that was a blown-up issue. But I can see that these are issues. We have some political issues, whether you want to recognize it or not, or you want to, as a board member, say, well, I'm not going to share my political beliefs. Well, I'll share my political beliefs. I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal. I believe that critical race theory is very important, and that if we lose sight of that as educators, we can't be a world-class school system. That's my personal opinion. That's not the board opinion. But like it or not, these things are brought forward from Tallahassee. There's been a huge swing in Tallahassee. These standards have been changed, and this absolutely affects what we're teaching in our schools, what our teachers are subjected to if they use wrong words. And so I'm not saying we have a debate here on the dais, because perhaps some people believe it the way I do and others don't. That's not the point. The point is, to me, that we have to ensure that we as board members understand some of these concepts that have come out of Tallahassee because of the change in our standards. And I think it's part of our decision making, and I think it's also part of our advocacy, because what are we going to advocate for to our legislators? We can't say we've never advocated for things that aren't controversial. This was a school district that for years didn't want to include sexuality education in health classes, in health education. And finally, the board voted. Well, how did they vote on it? Because it was a hot button issue and people had to be educated on it. So again, my views on it, I'm expressing my views, but this particular indicator that we voted so low, I think it's an important one, but I don't think it's expressed well, and I think we need to have some more specific language on it.
Okay,
I'm done with my speech.
Ms. Morgan.
So was not a teacher for my entire career, so I don't understand the educational impact of CRT on various students at various ages of education. I mean, that's when I say that I would like to hear about research and trends in education, I mean from the professionals on staff who can teach me what it is, and from there I can form an opinion and vote however it is my conscience allows me to vote. I believe we could have avoided the politics of LGBT had we learned about this as a board much sooner than we did. We learned about it too late in the process. Is it a political issue? Yes. Are we elected? Yes. We can't avoid politics in these positions. I would like to just, you and I have had this discussion. I would like to avoid the outright political, I'm a this, I'm a that, you're this, you're that. Like, I think that is counterproductive in terms of communications. In my 4.5 years on the board, 98% of the decisions I have made at this table have been apolitical. They've had absolutely nothing to do with politics. And when it explodes in the community, it's on us to fix it and figure it out. And it's also on us to be able to explain to the community from the dais and in individual conversations and emails why we voted the way we did, what our understanding is of the topic. In terms of LGBT, people are asking me questions that I can't answer because I don't know what's happening in the district. I can't respond to the questions. So I don't want to be there on CRT And when I see the news and I see what's happening in Collier, it's only a matter of minutes before it comes up to Lee. So I'd like to avoid that if we can, and go about this in an educationally sound manner, understand what it is so that I can answer the community's questions. Perhaps a better example in terms of events would have been the explosion on a legal corridor and how that's going to impact our schools and our need to quickly turn around and create more opportunities for CTE in our schools so that we're preparing our students. You know, I read about that in the paper, and I probably should have sat down at the table and said, hey, you know, what is the district doing about this? Can we be briefed on this? That's what I'm talking about. It's not just political issues. It's events and trends in the larger community, whether it be just our schools, all of Lee County, state of Florida, across the nation. We can't avoid these things. And if we can be prepared ahead of time, then I think we serve our community better. That's it. That's all I'm talking about here.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan?
So I think this is a conversation we need to have. I'm not sure this is the time to have it. I think maybe we need to schedule a workshop. If we're going to talk about all of the other components, I think we need to move on. This has clearly struck a nerve, and I think it does require further exploration. But we can either stop what we're doing on the board development and do the workshop, or we can put this item over for a workshop and keep going on the board development. But I'm losing our focus.
Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Gittens.
Okay, so two things. You know, I think that we are not the only impact on students. Families are also, you know, they learn what they live. And I share some of the attitudes and concerns of some of my colleagues, but again, I don't unless it's a definite decision that we have to make on behalf of our students, I don't think that the board dais is the place for our personal or political opinions to come out. We have to come to agreement as a group and stick with our policies, our Constitution, and our laws. And if I don't want to belabor this, but I just need to, I'm confused about the LGBTQ thing, because Ms. Patrica, if I may ask, Ms. Patrica, what is it that we didn't learn about soon enough? I mean, as a board, because I don't know what that would be. I'm confused.
I wasn't privy to the same training you were privy to from Equality Florida. I didn't attend that training. I don't know when you attended that training, but it was quite some time ago. I wasn't privy to that. So, and this is not a matter of you got information before I did. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you had a much deeper level of understanding of what was happening in the district with regard to LGBT issues and students than I did. And I'm still left with 4 kids in our schools not understanding how they will be treated on this issue.
Okay.
And as a board member, I should have an understanding so that when parents come to me and say, are girls allowed to use the boys' bathrooms, I can give them a solid answer.
Okay.
I'm not there.
No, so I just want to clarify that part. Okay, so as a school counselor for over 30 some odd years, I've been dealing with this issue ever since the get-go. This is not new to me at all. So when Equality Florida came several times to FSW and to our Caloosahatchee room and gave training to administrators and other staff, we were all invited to go, and I thought that we all did. And there was a period of time at, we had a workshop with Mr. Edie and Crystal, and so, and forgive me, but I'm just going to say, to me, this is nothing new. We've been dealing with this in our schools on an individual basis in a tactful manner for years. So that's why I'm a little confused about the whole to-do. And Equality Florida, I will agree that the poster as it stood, not necessarily the information contained in it, but the name of Equality Florida being in our code of conduct was not a good decision. I have to say that now. And I did not see the posters until they were already created. But for some reason, they were given, I think it was because I was the chair at the time, they were given to me and then I passed them out. So I think that the reaction of some groups in the community has contributed to the confusion. But all I'm going to say is LGBTQ is nothing new. It goes back to ancient Greece. And transgender is not necessarily have anything to do with LGBTQ. So there are a lot of innuendos. And yes, I've got training as a counselor, you know, and I've had those kinds of classes along the way. So that's why I'm saying, you know, really, we need to be handling this in a very much more dignified, individual approach, and look at it as we need to respect all people, regardless of whether they have rainbow hair or dark skin or they wear funny clothes, whatever that is. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. And so I appreciate the difference.
I think we're getting a little off topic,
Yeah,
but I
we
will
are.
tell you,
No,
that's
we
one
are,
of the
but I-
things, but that's one of the things I love about you, is that I know that on mental health, we're covered. But you got to know that's a huge deficit here. So you bring that knowledge to the table, and I'm confused. I have no idea what's going on. And so
yeah.
while that's your strength, that's my weakness, and I can rely on you on that most of the time, but this is new to me. It might not be new to you, but it's completely new to me.
Right,
So-
exactly. So I agree, we do need some more training as a board, and we probably do need a workshop to clarify some of those issues and make a decision together about how we're going to deal with it. And I appreciate that you explained that. So,
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Ms. Gittens, I know you have a comment, and then I would really, after that comment, I'd really like to get us back to, do we have an action step for this so that we can move forward with additional items? Ms. Gittens.
Okay, this may help to get us back, but the first point I wanted to make is there's a reason that our positions are nonpartisan, so that we can deal in a nonpartisan way with the education of children as a whole in public school. The other thing I wanted to say is, yes, I believe there should be some education on topics, but I'm concerned in that a comment Ms. Patrica made yesterday that we've trained on this side of the topic, but we haven't got training on this side of the topic, and that just to me gets so into the weeds with it. I would like to suggest, and I go back first of all to saying a topic comes up like this, our first thing is to ask staff, how will and can this affect children? Will we need to do a change in curriculum? And that's not driven by us, that's driven by Tallahassee and DOE. So that's our first step, to look at that and say, they are giving us, it's like the unfunded mandates, they're giving us this mandate, have they given us the steps to go with it and how we're supposed to do that? Or do they just drop it in our laps? That's, bless you, that's where we need to start. If you're giving us this, then how far reaching, and what are the points? The education piece should come initially with the mandate to do it. But then, once we understand that, we need to see, do we need to change our curriculum? Do we need to train teachers? Is there a textbook change that needs to happen? Those are the check boxes for us as a governance team, not how we feel about it. And then finally, the training to me should be more of, we sit down in a room, here's the topic, here's the pros and the cons, not from any biased way at all, but this is what the definition is by this person, this is the definition over here, this is what we are faced at doing, how do we take this and this, according to DOE, and put it into our lessons and to teach our children. and we keep funneling it back to, we are told by DOE to do this. I think part of our problem right now is the public and everybody feels that the Lee County School District and each school district is just making all this stuff up and saying, we're going to teach our children and this is what we're doing. So back to what you're saying, Cindy, I have pulled out, and I've asked this over and over again, that we standardize our evaluation to be similar to that of our employees. I'm looking at the one for the superintendent and let's just say on educational leadership. It's explained there. Okay, recruits and retains, all right? So consistently, frequently, inconsistently, rarely. And it's very simple. If we had all of that laid out for board effectively discusses research about events and trends, do we consistently base it on this? Do we frequently do this? And define it. We need to sit down and take these two documents and mesh them together so we understand what we're evaluating ourselves on. You know, like Ms. Morgan said, she put a 2. I put a 2. And I'm thinking back, okay, why'd I say a 2? But if we have it defined, it makes it easier, it makes it less controversial, and it's all out there. Even if, I hate to put it all on staff to do, but there's sections, we could each take a section and work on it. And make that our job. It's our evaluation. How would you put this in these 5 categories? And then we just do it. So that's my statement.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with your last comment there. Yesterday, I believe you did come to a consensus to do that, so we'll be looking forward to a date to look at the evaluation process. In the meantime, I believe we already have a method to address this in terms of your workshop topics and coming to consensus around those. So to me, my suggestion would be that the action step would be that board members identify topics that they believe, whether it's a topic around an event or a trend in the larger community that will have an effect on schools. They would put that in the, I can't think of the name. In the Google document, saying that you would request a workshop one, and it would go into our parking lot. Thank you, that's the term. Would go into our parking lot, and then once a month, those topics would be brought forward as they are now, and you would have that discussion about why you believe you need to have additional information on this, how it's going to impact schools, and then would make a decision as to whether it needs to be a training, if it needs to be a staff presentation, or what is involved. So that would be my recommendation. If you have another way of doing that, I'll open that for comment. Mrs. Giddens.
Well, not necessarily another way, but 2 things. One, I feel it's the superintendent's job to actually have a finger on the pulse of what's happening in education and in the community, and to be able to bring to us, and we hear and we share as a governance team. But as those things come up, like you said, bring up the topic if we haven't heard it, but the superintendent would have a better view of it from academic, from financial, from all of the aspects that he or she controls. So, and the second thing I want to say is, I see this process as a workshop, and we break up into groups and we're given a section and you come up with, fill this in and you fill in these boxes and the next group, and then we put it all together. We go on to the second part and we wordsmith it, and it's done. Okay.
Referring to the evaluation itself, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So certainly the superintendent is part of the governance team and always has the ability to include things in the parking lot. I would hate to limit it to the superintendent bringing things forward, as many of you will hear from your constituents, from other people, that you may hear a topic that the superintendent would not be aware of. Could I have consensus around the action step being that governance team members would bring topics forward to the parking lot for consensus? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to type it in right now. Okay.
That's if it pertains to education, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
That may affect schools.
Affect schools,
That's what it says.
not just what they're hearing.
Okay, and I'm just going to put shorthand in there so I will know what that means. And then the responsibility would be the governance team. And the time frame would be ongoing, as it would just depend on when things came up. All right, one action step completed. Hallelujah. So let's move forward. The second area, the lowest area, was I have been present at board meetings where discussions about values of the district were key factors in reaching a conclusion to a problem. So comments around this and whether you believe we need to take action steps moving forward. Mrs. Patrica.
So I'm looking at our values right now. Excellence, integrity, high expectations, accountability, belief in students, and professionalism. Why I'd like to see them at each of our seats at the dais. And that, for me, would serve as a guardrail. As I'm making a decision or I'm making a comment, does this fulfill the values that we as a leadership team have agreed to implement? That's an action step.
Could I have consensus around that? That's a pretty straightforward request. Have the values listed at each seat. Okay, one can live with it. Okay, so that's our first action step. Additional comments or questions?
On this number 5? On the same number?
Yes. Okay. If there are no others, then we will move on to the next item. So the board recognizes the superintendent as chief executive officer and educational leader of the district. That received a 2.0. The range was from 0 to 2. Any discussion around that? I hear no discussion, so no action to be taken on this one? Mrs. Jordan?
I think that we just have to, as far as action, we do have to recognize that. So we have to make sure that we are recognizing the fact that they are, the superintendent is chief executive.
In the interest of time, I'd invite you to look at the others in this section and see if there are any others that you would like to address in the section of contextual, and if not, we'll move on to the educational dimension.
Could you repeat that, please, Cindy? I'm a little confused.
Yes, if you would look at the other items in the contextual section, the dimension 1.
And then you'd move on to it.
If there are no others that you wish to take action on, then we would move on to dimension 2, educational. Mrs. Morgan.
Yes, I lost track. The last one we just took a pass on that we're
Yes.
supposed to be sensitive to.
Yes.
Board recognizes the superintendent as chief executive officer and educational leader of the district. So we have 1, 3, 1, 4, a bunch of 2s, a 0, and a 1 for an average of 2. We are going to have a problem with this score with an interim superintendent and a new superintendent if we don't have a common understanding of what the role of the superintendent is as chief executive officer and what our role is as a board. I think this is a topic for a workshop.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher and then Mrs. Gittens.
Yeah, and I just go back to that yellow sheet with the black line down the middle where it says the board does this and the superintendent does that. And I think that there has been some difficulty in understanding when you say, you know, the superintendent is the chief executive order. Okay, that means we kind of make the rules and he executes. That means he does, you know, we say what and he says how with his staff. And I think that that has been a little bit difficult for some of the board to live with. And I think that we've, and I'm going to say this anyway, even though I shouldn't, sorry, Mrs. Gittens in advance, but a lot of times there's a lot of stepping over the line and getting into the weeds where really that is not the place of the board. So I agree with Mrs. Morgan, we need a workshop.
Thank you. Mrs. Gittens.
Thank you for that, Ms. Fisher. As you see, I did a 3 because to me, when I read that question, I read it as, do I personally understand that yellow sheet? Do I understand what the roles are? Yes, I do. And that's how I graded this. Now, whether the ones and the zeros, I kind of took the understanding of just what you said, Ms. Fisher, that you feel that some of us do not understand. I understand that. But I also understand that if I have questions and I'm told to stay in my lane, that that is not appropriate of that position. So how do I get answers to questions? So I continue to ask questions. So I did it fairly high because, yes, I understand the roles. I understand my role. But I also understand that if I, as a member of this governance team, have a question, I should get an answer. There are still answers that I have a list of them from 2 years ago that have not been addressed and never been answered. So I'm just saying it's indicative of our board to see these scores, and it is a statement to the rest of us on the board. But I answered it as to whether I understood it. I do understand. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli.
And I answered it the same way. Just because we ask questions doesn't mean we don't know who the superintendent is or that he's the CEO. So I think that if you don't ask questions, you're not doing your job. And rubber stamping is something that I'm not going to do, and I'm going to ask questions when I don't understand. I'm sorry that somebody doesn't think. I answered this the same way. I totally understand and who the superintendent is, and so I'm going to continue that process. I don't understand. Now I read this, and maybe the people that said 0 or 1 or whatever, maybe they don't understand, because just because I'm asking questions doesn't mean I don't understand who the superintendent is, and everything has to go through the superintendent, everything. So I clearly understand that. So I'm not sure. I think maybe we need to go back to what our job is as school board members, maybe. So maybe that's where maybe we don't know our job in order to know his job. I don't even claim to know his job or try to, but I'm going to hold him accountable because that's my job.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, and I don't want for anyone to think that I'm saying that you shouldn't ask questions, because you should ask questions. I have just seen in situations where questions have been answered to us in briefings, questions have been answered to us in workshops. We have an opportunity with our individual meetings to ask questions of the superintendent and staff, and yet I've heard it repeated a number of times. So I don't know whether the questions haven't been addressed, or like someone said before, maybe they have not been addressed to their satisfaction. And so maybe that is a good suggestion, Ms. Giovanelli, that we do workshop it, and then we do look at our role as board members. And I think asking questions is imperative.
Right. Questions are for the community as well. And if we sit up here and always vote yes to everything and never ask any questions, that's not what we're here for. I mean, people have to understand why we're voting yes to something. And it's not questioning the superintendent, it's finding for everyone else to understand and be on the same page. Yeah, we do have opportunity to ask questions and so forth at different times, but still maybe the answer we got, like somebody said earlier, didn't help. So, and we're not going to always vote yes to everything. We should be voting no on some things, or when we don't think that we've got the answers that make us feel comfortable. That's what I think we're elected to do. So I think defining our job maybe is the issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gittens.
And just let me say this to at least clear the air from my perspective. Asking questions and bringing something up multiple times is not saying that I do not understand who the superintendent is and what his job is. Give you just a quick couple of examples. One, the CIP process that we were privy to a couple of weeks ago, and they sat here and went through. How many times have I asked about a process? How many times have I asked, how do we do this? When do you involve the community? When do you do this? How is this going? I mean, when do we know? And there were no answers, but almost 3 years later, we sit here and we have a briefing about a process. If I had said nothing else about it, we still wouldn't have. The tech buildings in the east, I mean, even Ms. Morgan said yesterday, why are we still going around? Why haven't we done something with this? I cannot let things go, and it's not Gwen Gittens getting her way. It is for the sake of children and the people that I represent. And we are still not where we should be. Not where we should be at all. With the building of technical centers, with the portables, with all of the stuff that's going on. That is why I'm here, to be the voice for the voiceless. So you don't hear it from anybody else, you're going to hear it from me.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
I was just going to say, I'm not sure where questions came in because I see nothing on here about questions. And I appreciate everybody's questions, but can we move on? Can we move on to the next, please?
Thank you. I did put in as an action step that there's been a request for a workshop on the role of the board and the superintendent. So if you will take a look at any of the other items, pardon?
Are you going to take consensus on that? On that
I would, yes, I'll go ahead and take consensus because we won't have another opportunity to do that until actually August for the work, since there's only one July meeting. So could we have consensus on the request for a workshop on the role of the superintendent and the board? Okay. So I see 1, 2, 3 thumbs up, 2 sideways, and 2 down. So that does carry as a consensus for the workshop. Thank you. So we have a few more items in Dimension 1. So if you would take a quick look at those. There's establishes and maintains a systemic plan for feedback on policies to determine effectiveness, their worth, and whether they need to be amended, modified, or canceled. Kept informed about student growth, and stays abreast of policies mandated by state and federal law. Is there a request by anyone to take an action on one of those? Mrs. Gittens.
When I read, I guess it's showing up on mine as number 2, that very first one about discussing and researching events and all, and the one about the board taking time to learn about important issues facing schools. To me, that's combined. That is what we were saying about that first one. We have to take the time to understand about these important issues. That's where all this stuff comes in. And so whatever we decided to do on that first one, we should include that board takes time to learn about important issues, because it's all one and the same. And that's what I was talking about. What is the effect? Is it affecting just the students or the teachers or whatever?
Okay, thank you.
Stakeholders, I mean, really.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, are there any other requests for an action step? Okay. If not, we'll move on to Dimension 2, which is the educational dimension. The lowest average score there was a 1.6, and the board has discussions about the effectiveness of its performance. Comments around that? Mrs.
I
Patrica.
was the lowest, so I'll start. I do believe that, I'll put it on me. If I hear a repeated criticism of my behavior and my actions at the table, I will self-reflect and try to figure out what I'm doing wrong and how I can be better. And I don't think that happens here. I think that we discuss things as a team, people bring up issues, and then others say, well, I don't do that, and I'm allowed to do this, and I'm allowed to do that, so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, instead of like having a discussion about how individual actions are really harming the performance of the team moving forward. I don't frequently hear the word team used with regard to our work, and I guess that's, I don't hear those discussions taking place. You know, you hear me say, I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to be less caustic in my approach to my colleagues. I'm really trying. I don't hear that trying coming from anywhere else when it comes to issues that are raised with regard to board performance or board actions or board behavior.
Yes, ma'am. So today's conversation actually addresses this specifically as the team is working to improve performance. And so we've heard your comments, and I believe Ms. Gittens had her hand up as well.
I have a question for Ms. Patrica. How would you, in a perfect world, then see that working?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
How would you, in a perfect world, get to the point where you would change your vote on this?
Where I would change my vote on this?
Yes.
I guess just understanding that what I want and what I need is inferior to what the board wants and what the board needs. If I could get that sense from all of my colleagues, I would think that that would be a positive. That would become a 3 or a 4 for me. But I don't frequently get that sense. I frequently get the sense that I want to do X, Y, and Z, and unless X, Y, and Z occurs, I am going to continue to behave the way I'm behaving, period. End of conversation.
And you are saying that the behaviors are inappropriate?
I'm sorry, I still can't hear you.
And you're saying behaviors are inappropriate?
Are imperfect?
Inappropriate as to...
I think that when the board makes a decision and we actively and purposefully go against the board's decision, yes, that is inappropriate. Myself included.
Okay, and...
This is not toward any one individual person at this table. This is a general statement regarding my experience on the board, the school board of Lee County.
Okay, and then I will finish my comments by saying my thoughts about behaviors and my personal behavior on the board will come up later, and you will see it as we go further down. But I still maintain that we are all 7 individuals, although we are a team. And the best results from a team are not necessarily 7-0. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so we are a governance team, and we actually had a bit of a conversation today that revolved around our effectiveness. There was a period of time where after our meetings, we took a few minutes to do pluses and deltas and to kind of evaluate our performance that night while it was fresh in our minds and while we were, in the mode to say what we wanted to say. And that seemed to be somewhat effective, and I don't know if that might be a strategy that we could try one more time. I know that there were some members of the public that felt like we were out of the sunshine, which we were not because it was an advertised time, and our board attorney was with us to make sure that we stayed within the confines of the Sunshine Law. But that did seem to have some effectiveness, A, because of the timeliness, and B, because of the fact that, we were all together and we all heard and saw the same thing. So I think that might be worth an effort at another time.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, Ms. Morgan, Ms. Vaughn.
I would not participate in that, and the reason being, it became more of an additional time to attack what you didn't like. And as far as following up, I challenge anyone to tell me what was taken from that plus delta and used in a positive way to make us any better.
Ms. Morgan?
Well, geez, I saw it kind of differently. I saw it as combining both Ms. Patrica and Ms. Fisher. It was an opportunity to identify things that we needed to self-reflect on and correct. And that's why when we really spoke to one another about what we felt was taking place and had a genuine understanding of the impact some of this was having, and given our absolute commitment to doing certain things, getting certain things accomplished, we were willing to engage in that process so that we could accomplish what we needed to have happen, which was the public needed to see us as a board and not as a bunch of individuals sitting at a table. And I think it was very effective. And yes, I think after a while, it probably degenerated a little bit just because we had become much more comfortable with one another. We had established a better working relationship at the table. And so, the stuff we discussed was really not as significant as when we first started down that path. But I agree. I think this is a time to try something, and it's not the touchy-feely whatever stuff. It's just a commitment of each of us as individuals to try to find a way that we can talk about our issues as a team and our performance. Anyway.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
I think it's interesting that this seems to be shaking out so far into the 3-4 camp, because I'm with Ms. Gittens. I saw no value in it. I saw it as an opportunity for the majority. And you can shake your head, you can say, no, it wasn't that. But the perception was, at least on my side, which is why I did go to those after I went to a couple of them, that it was just another chance for the majority to put the dagger in more, and regardless of what you're saying, no, it wasn't that way. And if that was my perception, it was my perception. It didn't work. Let's face it, we've been together. This is unique in that we had an election and none of the chairs changed. It wasn't like in 2018 where we had a significant change in the board. And if it didn't work the first time, it's not going to work now. Just my opinion on it, and if anybody else jumps in on it, I'd like to see if it does shake out to the 3-4 in terms of how effective the pluses and deltas were.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, then Ms. Morgan, then Mrs. Gittens.
Okay, well, I won't support it because I'll tell you why. It was supposed to be about this board. It became about my husband, who had to leave because he was in his uniform and wearing a gun because he's a police officer and came from work here. So that made it about him. So no, it's not about the board, and so I am not going to support that where it becomes about someone that comes and attends the meeting. So. I disagree with, it wasn't productive. This board didn't stand up saying, no, this is Melissa Giovanelli's husband who comes all the time, and this board sat quietly and let my husband be escorted out, and so I will not support that. Sorry. No one took up for me as a board member, and that being my husband. Not one person on this board.
I did.
Not publicly.
Yes, I did.
And so, which also, let me remind everyone that it led them for this district to contact my husband's boss, tried to get him in trouble. They went to the OIG. They wanted an OIG opinion that was already done many, many years ago that this board chose to do, which I didn't argue even. I even agreed with the board because I wanted to make sure that I was doing things and upholding the board as a team, and I even voted for that. So I will not agree to it, and because it wasn't done productively at all, it was done negatively, and I will not support that. So thank you.
Mrs. Morgan?
So I guess my question is, a suggestion has been made. Clearly, it has not been well received by everybody. So what is another suggestion? How do we get where we need to be? Mrs. Giovanelli has just made it clear that she is still stewing about something that happened a number of years ago. There are other board members sitting here who are stewing about things that were said to them, done to them, whatever, and that affects how we converse with one another at the table. Now, how do we deal with that? How are we going to handle those emotions, those issues? And do they belong here at all? If they belong here, how are we going to tackle them so that we're a better team?
Vaughn?
Something that we haven't reflected on is, as a governance team, we seven, but we have us. We have, the seven of us, and we have the superintendent. The superintendent has been a constant. There is I believe there's an evaluation question on how the superintendent brings the board together. And so we have the opportunity at this point to see if, with a different superintendent, who has more effective skills in bringing governance teams together, whether things change. But I really don't see a path forward, considering, and we have a lot of conciliatory, and we have a lot of conciliatory remarks, and I'm self-reflecting, and I'm trying, and we did this, and we did that. Well, it just didn't work. And so I'm suggesting that perhaps the 8th member is at least partially at fault on this, and perhaps someone who has more effective skills on bringing a governance team together will bring this board together. Because let's face it, even though we didn't go through the evaluation, there were definite divides. There were huge gulf divides in the people that gave the highest scores and the people that gave the lowest scores. We had no middle scores, although the overall came to that way. And this is not about bashing anybody. It's about talking about us as a governance team and the fact that we have 8 people on the team, and maybe that's a factor that we have not considered.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Well, I just would like to say, I'm not stewing, and these are some of the things, maybe because of my psychology background, but we have to, if we really want this to work, we have to think before we speak. Some of the statements that are made, and you may feel exactly the way you feel, Ms. Fisher and Ms. Morgan, but the statements that are made, how do they help men? I was on the board for 2 months. Second month I was on the board, I was reprimanded right back there in a plus and delta about my attire. And it went on to be another staff member remarked about my attire. So it's not a matter of stewing. No one has ever apologized to me, or no one has ever said, well, we didn't mean it that way or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I have a job to do and I am here. But what you all have to understand is choose your words, because words do cause division. And in the way you say things causes division. Saying that someone is stewing and everybody else shaking their head like, yeah, they sure still thinking about that. But that means if I say it, or Miss Giovanelli says it, maybe it means that there's still hurt there. And maybe it needs to be addressed. And maybe it needs to be explained or someone discuss it. It means that there's still a hurt, not a stew.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
So we have hurt feelings, we have anger, we have people who feel that they can criticize others, and that's unfortunate, because in order for us to do the work that we are here to do, we are going to need to put the past behind us and start from scratch. We have 7 educated, intelligent women on this board who have amazing potential to be a great team. But as long as we are worrying about our own personal agendas, I'm just going to do another one of my history lessons, because that's sometimes the way I can communicate best. But when I was a school counselor, I had an opportunity to do a lot of groups, and I'm also a state of Florida family mediator certified. And so one of the things that I've done with some groups where there were some issues, I've said, let's put all of our hurt feelings and our anger in a little bag and tie it shut. And I would give them each a bag, and they'd tie it shut and leave it outside the door. And I promise you, no one else is going to take those away. And if apologies are needed, then they should be offered. And I remember those incidents, because I personally was appalled at what happened with Mrs. Giovanelli's husband, who's a law enforcement officer. And no, Betsy, I'm not out of time.
No. She's signaling a break.
Oh.
And we didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry.
That's why I didn't walk over there.
And when Mrs. Gittens wore her regalia, I thought that was beautiful. I mean, and so we can't control some of the things that people say and do, and we don't know where everyone's coming from, but we have a job to do here, and we all took an oath of office, and we take ethics every year, and we say that we're going to do the job, but we're not doing it. So unless we can say, okay, let's all agree to wipe the slate clean and start from now, we can still do really good work as a team, as a governance team. And I just want to say this. Dozens of people have said to me, you're the swing vote, because there is no 4-3. And if you go back and look at the votes, I am not consistently voting with any group of people. I do my homework and I vote the issues. And I'm not going to comment on the superintendent's evaluation, but that was another issue. We did not all have the same experiences, and I'm fully aware of that. So now we have an opportunity to move forward, and I hope that we can self-reflect and be the best that we each can be, take responsibility for our own behavior, and don't worry about what everybody else is doing, and let's get the job done. There's a lot of work to do in this growing district, and we have almost 100,000 kids depending on us, not to mention our staff who have worked hard to take care of those children and contribute to the community in that way. So I hope we can do that.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. We've had a request for a break. Ms. Jordan, did you have a comment about this
I
one?
just want to apologize. I have to keep getting up because I'm having this cough, and I don't want to do that out here, so I apologize.
You're fine.
Ms. Gittens, do you have a comment
Just
before we
one
take?
short thing. I know I'm the only thing between everybody in the restroom, but I have a plethora and a list of all the things and the times that I have been demeaned and character assassinated and all that. It's not that I'm keeping it up on my wall to look at it. But in response to Ms. Fisher, it's not just that I was berated because of what I wore. It's been continuous, constant, ongoing, and it was not 3 years ago. It has been consistent. So it's, when you say, get over it, I may jump over it today and tomorrow there's something else. There is a plethora of times that I can refer to, but I won't. And I'm not harboring, anger towards all of you. I have a job to do, and I feel I've been doing it to the best of my ability. So.
Thank you. So there has been a request for a break. And just to wind up this one area, the board has discussions about the effectiveness of its performance. Obviously, today, there was a lot of discussion around that so far, and then a lot of discussion about individual actions. I would request that as you think more about this and think about an action, that you think about what is the action that's going to affect the performance of the board, not necessarily individual action, what's going to affect someone else's actions or someone else's feelings about actions, but how do those feelings and how do those actions affect the performance of the board as a whole? And then maybe we can come back and talk about an action step related to increasing that performance. So it is 3:21 now. Would it be acceptable to take a 9-minute break, come back at 3:30?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, 9 minutes. Thank you.
Let's do that. and Ms. Cindy McClung is going to finish out the section that we started before the break, and that will be followed by public comment. Thank you, Ms. McClung.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Fine. So I was looking at the items in the second section, and most of the ones that were the lowest rated are all very much related. So my suggestion, based on the time today, is that we look at those, that you take some time and look at those over the next week or so, and you have this spreadsheet was sent to you this afternoon. I will update it and send it back to you with the suggestions that have already been made today. And then if you will look at those lowest scoring areas in each of the dimensions and put your thoughts in the action step area over here to the right, and then send those to me or bring them back with you to the next meeting, then we'll have a place to start our discussion at the next meeting. I truly believe the conversation today has been needed and has been a first step toward improving the performance of the board. However, I do believe that this could be a multi-hour conversation and that we will not be able to get through the 6 dimensions today. So in order to give time for public comment and board member comments, I would like agreement that we will stop at this point and everyone will go back, take some time to look and put some actions in that place. Can we have consensus on that? Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
And thank you, Ms. McClung. Excellent job in facilitating. I was going to say keeping us focused, but I agree with what you said. It was it was a good call on your part, because sometimes you just need to expand the conversation a little bit. So thanks. Okay, I think we have at least one person for public comment. Ms. Dupree-Bruno, would you please read the information for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter from the meeting's agenda. If you completed a blue card, please put in the basket provided. I don't believe there's anyone who requires a blue card. The rules concerning public comment are posted, and comments will be made from the central microphone in the back. Please be advised that the board does not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. At the end of the public comment period, the board vice chair will address concerns or assign them to the superintendent. Speakers and those attending the meeting are expected to act in a respectful manner. The purpose of public comment is to provide feedback on today's agenda only. Personal attacks on individuals or abusive language are prohibited. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. The time per speaker is 3 minutes, and you will find the countdown clock on the big screen in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. We encourage you to address the board as a whole versus individual board members as they act as a collective body. Please state your name prior to making your comment. Madam Chair, we have one speaker, and ma'am, if you may go ahead and begin.
Hello, Christine DiVigili here. I only have a few things. My first one is on the agenda today. So I left my house today. I printed the agenda right before I left my house, and I printed all of the attached documents as well. That was probably at about 12:15 this afternoon. When I did that, and I have that copy of the agenda on me, nothing was attached at that time to numbers 2 and 3 under your on the agenda items, the board procedures manual, finalization, and the self-evaluation action plan. It wasn't until I was listening to you guys speak that I was like, what are they talking about right there? Maybe I should go back on board docs and look again to see if something's there that wasn't there before. And sure enough, there were 2 things there that were not there when I left my house at 12:15 to come here today. So I guess that would be my first issue, is why, I'm just curious why documents were not included in board docs 48 hours, shoot, even, before today's meeting would have been nice. But I'm wondering about that. I would like to implore you guys, please, Please don't rely on governance team members to relay important educational information to you, especially on issues like CRT. Instead, I encourage the board to independently research topics that are presented to you, especially by the DOE. Informed choice should be present in every aspect of your decision making, and it is very disheartening to hear that anything other than this even be suggested. I couldn't help but hear the hurt through the words of multiple board members before the recess. I would like to suggest, perhaps, like I've heard you guys on numerous occasions now, even dating back well over a year, you guys not see eye to eye on things. And rather than just sit here and berate you guys for that and just be another voice, you know, be another negative voice in the room, I would like to suggest maybe, I was looking into this the other day, maybe you guys hire a corporate therapist. I know that sounds kind of weird and modern or progressive, but I was looking into it, and it might be something that you guys would benefit from. They take an entirely different look on your situation, and they give an entirely different viewpoint that you guys could possibly benefit from. Also, I think Ms. Gittens said it perfectly when she said to think before you speak. As educators and professionals in the educational background, perhaps we use the acronym THINK before we speak, both to each other and to the public, by asking ourselves, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate all the work that you guys do. This is a very hard job, and no one is discounting that. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Mr. DiVigeli. We appreciate your coming and waiting and expressing your thoughts. Actually, we have discussed the problem of sometimes not having some of the backup items on board docs in a timely manner. By and large, our staff does an incredible job, but, well, without making an excuse, because this is the truth, the end of the school year, even for people that aren't in the buildings, is always an incredibly busy time. And then when you add the fact that we are in the middle of looking for an interim superintendent and looking ahead to our search company and all of that with the permanent superintendent, yeah, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances, but that is an issue that all of us are concerned with, and hopefully moving forward, we will maybe have fewer changes, and that would enable everything to be on board docs in a more timely manner. I agree with you totally about independently researching some of the issues, as I have independently researched what we were talking about earlier, because we do have differing viewpoints here on the board, and I've never been shy about expressing what my political view is. Anyway, I think we've had a corporate therapist, sort of. We actually have hired from the outside in the past. We don't, shouldn't say this, but we don't want to waste taxpayer money. No, that's, there's always hope. And the bottom line is, even though you do see a lot of picking and arguing, at the end of the day, most of us, even if it's a vote that we're not happy with, we do pick ourselves up and follow what we as a body have decided on. So you can, and I think Lee County is humming along quite well, despite the fact that sometimes you see us and maybe not our finest moments, but I think in the end we do get things done. But we really appreciate your coming here. That takes us to board member comments. So, let's just start in the middle today. Ms. Jordan, do you have?
She always starts with me. How come me first? Okay.
Because you have fresh from your break and.
Okay, so my comments are, it was a very, very busy weekend with graduations, and it was just fabulous seeing all these kids being, excuse me, being able to walk across the stage. I was able to do Lee Virtual School, which they had, I believe it was 68 people. Oasis Charter School was one of them. Island Coast with almost 400 students. North Fort Myers, I believe we had it was over 600 students, I believe. I know we kept looking out and it felt like we were still in the beginning of the alphabets. Mariner High School was the last one that I did on Sundays, but just watching all these children and their parents and their fan base, even in a storm, we had a storm, right? A storm on Sunday, and those kids came in, got soaking wet, but that was okay. The parents got wet, but they were there, they were smiling, they were happy to receive their diplomas. Also, I just wanted to, I heard some people had said about the superintendent. I just wanted to have some clarification on that. On the 14th, we will be having a briefing meeting for that, and that's when we will have the discussion and the conversation on who that would be, and we will have a special meeting at 4 o'clock where we will then appoint who that person will be. Then on June 21st is when the firms are supposed to be search firms for the superintendent, the permanent superintendent. Everybody's supposed to be in at that time. We now have we still have just 4, even though we have an ad out requesting more. At this time, that's what we have. So that will be coming on the 21st, and we will be moving forward with starting to work with the firms in order for us to get a permanent superintendent. I did want to say, too, I also had the opportunity to go to Buckingham, and I'm not sure if I shared this or not already, but they had their prom, Buckingham Exceptional Center. They had their prom, and it was Alice in Wonderland. That was absolutely gorgeous, and they were dancing, and and I have some of their pictures, and I was not able to put those in, so you'll be seeing those. I have permission to share that with the parents, and I just felt that they were worth sharing. So you'll be seeing them at the next meeting. A little bit late, but you'll be seeing them. And just, I appreciate each and every one of you, and I know that we can be the best people that we can be, and as we move forward. And that's my comments.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. I also had the opportunity to attend some graduations, and that is always the most uplifting part of this job for me, is being with the kids. They were amazing, well-spoken, inspirational, and brave. And we appreciate all the work that the staff did in presenting them to the public. The ceremonies were dignified, everyone was well-behaved, and it was just, all in all, a good experience. So I just want to say that I do believe that we have amazing potential to work as a team and to stay focused on the work of this district. I would hate for us to just say, okay, let's disband this board because we're not doing anything. But positively, voicing dissent can be crucial to a group's overall success. It can keep you on course and yield creative and unique results. After all, the purpose of any group is to come up with the best solution for the current project. And our project is to give the best education, a world-class education, to the students of Lee County. God bless you all. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Morgan.
So I wanted to say this last time, so this news is a little bit late, but congratulations to ITS for their Ed Week market brief. Oh, I'm so sorry. Congratulations to ITS for the Ed Week market brief. A district transforms its technology to make teachers' lives easier. So Dwayne Alton was interviewed, and they talked about the creation of a digital ecosystem infrastructure to economize teachers' time by keeping all the learning resources in one place. Another great plug for the work being done in this district. We are a local, state, national leader when it comes to use of technology. Just wanted to point out for members of the public who might be watching, you know, we're always talking about how our kids are doing better, so referring to the advanced academics summary data provided in the May 14 weekly update, student enrollment in AP, IB, ACE has grown since 16-17. I'm going to just read the stats. Enrollment for white students has increased, but is relatively constant for the past 2 years at 38%. Enrollment for black students increased significantly in 2021, topping out at 26%. Yes, there is a gap, but they're making gains, and that's what we're really looking for. Enrollment for Hispanic students has increased steadily. It's now at 29%. And enrollment for all ELL students has gone from 0.2% to 15%. So we're having an impact. We're not where we need to be, but I think the public needs to understand that the things that we're putting in place are really reflect our efforts to really identify opportunities to improve learning for kids. And then enrollment for white males has increased. Okay, enrollment for white males has increased and continues to increase annually. Now it's at 34% versus 38% for all. Enrollment for black males increased significantly 2021 to 24 versus 26 overall, which I think is a good number. And then enrollment for Hispanic males has increased steadily, now 25%. So in terms of HB 7033 Task Force on Closing the Achievement Gap for Boys, I think we're focused on that, and I think that's something we want to keep watching. So that's my educational comment. I want to congratulate Jennifer Ortega. She's the new Teacher of the Year. She teaches 7th grade reading at Lehigh Acres Middle School. She's a career changer. Joined the district after several years working as a sales manager. I want to compliment Jason Sill and the Lee County TV team. If you haven't had a chance to watch the Student Film and Television Awards on YouTube, do it. When you see what kids are even doing at the lower elementary level, it is absolutely remarkable. There are two things I'd like to put on the in the parking lot for discussion at some point about whether or not we want to have a board conversation. One is how this district handles non-renewal of highly effective and effective teachers. You know, we have become, again, such a big district that doing it the way it has always been done may not necessarily serve employees as well as it should. And I'm just thinking that some of the responsibility for helping these teachers who are being moved, highly effective teachers being moved, helping them at the school level as well as at the district level is something, you know, I'd like to explore. The other thing is I would like to explore enshrining interest-based bargaining in board policy. I think that, you know, it is something that has served this district incredibly well, and it was tested in some really tough times, and it held. And I think that's one culture that this district would be well served to sustain long term. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Could I just ask Ms. Morgan to send an email with the parking lot so we can make sure that they...
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to add It was a busy weekend with the graduations. A lot of fun, though. Just having the live graduations was exciting, and everybody was exciting. Everybody does it just a little bit different, even though it's kind of the same. It's kind of interesting how they do that, but that's great. I did want to bring up a couple things. I've had a lot of phone calls today and emails regarding the code of conduct, and basically the concern is the parental rights bill that goes in effect in July, and they're just asking, why can't we wait to do the code of conduct in July after and make sure that that's in the code of conduct before approving it. So I don't know if that's a discussion that we could have that would allow opportunity, because I know we're going to have speakers tonight on it, and I mean that's only like a month away to wait till do it in July. So is that a discussion?
Is there a statutory requirement for that to be approved?
So we definitely need to have it prior to school starting, and with the rulemaking process, you do need to add those, that time for it. The parental rights bill will become a policy because we're obligated to make that a policy.
Okay,
so, can you hear me now?
Yeah, not really, but not real loud.
Okay, so the parental rights bill will be a policy because we're required to make that a policy. With regards to the student code of conduct, we do have time limitations because of the policy-making process. Can they get it all revised and done prior to, school starting? We'd have to ask staff. I can't answer that question.
So could we amend the code of conduct to allow for that or something? Or it may have to be like really a workshop or discussion, but you know what I mean? I don't even know, but I was just, I said I would ask the question so that, the community would have a better understanding.
So my recommendation is that the Parent Bill of Rights not necessarily be in the Code of Conduct. It's going to be a policy on its own that will come before the board sometime in July, early August, for it to go through its rulemaking process, because the statute, once it's signed, requires the board to have a policy for the Parental Bill of Rights.
Okay. All right. Anybody?
Okay, so it appears that we want to have a brief conversation on this. Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Gittens.
Yeah, I have a question for Attorney Dupree-Bruno. So isn't the Parents' Rights Bill just like a combination of rules that already existed? And so there's, as far as health care and education.
So the basis of it is pulling up all of these rights that already exist in the statutes in different places and putting it as one. But there are little things here and there within that statute that I think will give it a little bit more teeth, a little bit more substance in terms of how it's applicable to districts.
Okay. Ms. Gittens?
I'm suggesting then, since there are, get between the chair, since there will be some changes, and it is the main thing that I keep hearing as well about parental rights, that we mention that this evening before the public comment, and perhaps Mr. Pre-Bruno can give that, legal definition that you were just telling us, if the chair would allow her to do that and bring that up just before public comment, and that we are considering that and how it will affect us going forward with the Student Code of Conduct. And I think that may at least help some people understand that this is not it, that we are moving, forward with that. So I just wanted to make that suggestion.
To break into this, that sounds like a good suggestion, so everybody can hear it. Can we just have a quick consensus whether Chair Jordan should add that right before the public comments?
Mr. Pre-Bruno.
Well, all right. Yeah, well, we were going to get to say it, or she will. Okay. that someone will do that. All right, so, Ms. Patrica, are you on board with, okay, so unanimous, so,
No, I don't understand what you mean. What is she going to say?
Basically what she said to us already, with the suggestion, Ms. Giovanelli suggested we wait, and what we were saying, what the attorney is saying, it's going to come up as a policy anyway. And
Absolutely,
people need
right.
to know that this is our local, code of conduct, but that the state, because I've gotten a lot of calls and suggestions too about, well, the governor said this, and so that's why we need the legal statement saying he did, and this is how we're going to include this. So.
Thank you.
So in other words, she's going to say it early.
so probably right before, yeah, so we have 100% on adding that, and so, Attorney Dupree-Bruno, would you be able to add basically what you just said about policy, and of course, the policy takes precedent over anything that might not be in line with it in the code of conduct, correct?
I will explain that.
Okay. So is the best time then right before the public comment, since you're already
100%.
have the mic? Okay. All right, so Mrs. Giovanelli.
Okay, I'll finish.
I guess, I was thinking, who was talking originally?
Yeah,
Is there
it was
anybody
me.
else that had a comment regarding what Ms. Giovanelli was talking about? All right, let's
Great.
continue
Okay,
with your
that's-
public comments, or your board member comments, sorry.
Yeah, so, and then another thing I'd like to have a discussion on, and I've brought it up before, and I just want to make sure that it's not something that this board wants to have the discussion on, is having that LGBTQ advisory committee. I still feel like that somehow, if we could get that to be the right diversity group, that they can, and have both sides in this group that has been mentioned at the table before, I still think it's a need, because in one of the meetings our training that we had, that was a question I brought up, and they said that it's important to have these groups, because it just brings awareness, and I think it's important, and I want everyone to feel that they have a voice, and all parties. So I just want to bring that out, throw that back out there, because it's been mentioned again at a meeting, and I brought it up twice. This is my third time, and so I just wanted to see if anybody wants to have that conversation.
Okay, Ms. Fisher and then Mrs. Gittens.
Yeah, so could you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I don't know. This would be something that the board needs to discuss completely. I just know it's been mentioned by the community to have an advisory group. I know we have Edac, and I appreciate that, but Edac is still small, and it's not exactly made up of actual completely LGBT, or even it is diverse, but it's not solving the problems that we have. And that's my concern. So unless we can give better direction towards Edac, I don't know, what else to do. I want to make sure that everybody has a voice at the table, and I'm talking about both sides. That's my concern. I think if that poster had went before Edac or prior to, or I think we would have had a better outcome, and at least awareness, and it would have went through a process better. And I just think we missed the boat completely.
Okay, so we do have the GSAs at most high schools and several of the middle schools. We do have Edac, we do have DAC.
Yep.
And we also have Mr. Williams, our staff attorney for the next couple of weeks, is a member of the State School Board Attorneys Advisory Board with Equality Florida. I'm currently representing the board as an advisory board member. So are you saying you want a student advisory?
I don't know. It needs to be I really wasn't saying student, I really didn't, I really don't even know what the expectations of the individuals that's been requesting it, but I wanted to respect that.
Yes.
That's really where I'm at today, is just for us to give them, shed that light and give them, to know that it didn't fall on deaf ears. How's that?
And so I do want to mention also that our current student advisory group has several members of the LGBT community, and they have made themselves known and announced their pronouns and everything, so they have a forum for their voices also. So I just didn't want to dismiss those groups that have already been in effect and are
correct. I don't either.
Job and
I don't
giving the
either.
kids a forum. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think Mrs. Gittens had something to say, and then Ms. Jordan.
Yes, well, and I've heard that request a couple of times. I am really not in favor of it because I am concerned of silos again. And I do have an idea that I have run by some of the people in the counseling department and that I will be bringing up to the board that may help with that situation. I mean, I've been around the district for a while, and I've been through where we had a, Hispanic council, we had a African American council, we had this and that, and nobody knows what happened to them. So we need to do it more thoughtfully, and I do have a suggestion of a plan to do that that is a little more inclusive. And as soon as I kind of finish talking it through and looking at the possibilities and not, then I will bring it to the board, and that may help to answer that question. Okay. But I just think at this time, it would be very tricky.
Yes, I agree with that too.
To do one group, and you've got 50 others that will say, yes, I want a group too.
Okay, and
Thank you. I just wanted to say, we do have Edac, and it is our diversity, and they are highly, highly diverse. We have people from all aspects of life that belong to that group. And as far as the poster, they absolutely did see that poster.
Not until after it was done, though.
No.
It should have been a process
No,
that
they seen it
the process was
before.
done right.
They seen it before. They seen it during. They seen it the whole entire time. And they were exactly, they are the ones who, Edac was actually recommended that poster.
Yeah, but the poster was, I don't want to get into the whole poster thing again,
yeah, and let's-
but
I don't either.
they
I just
didn't,
wanted to clarify that.
I've talked to people in EDAC, and they did not see the poster until after it was said and done, and the board hadn't even seen it really, so at that point too. So that's a whole nother sore subject, so let's avoid that.
not to interrupt, but rather than get in, okay, I think Ms. Patrica had a comment.
Yeah, I just-
And then let's kind of move on and actually put that as a possible discussion on how we might.
Just want to have a conversation, so thank you.
That we have that conversation. Okay, Mrs.
So
Patrica.
I don't think it's appropriate to bring a group of children together to discuss sex or sexuality. So I would not support that.
I wasn't talking about children, but.
You did say students, and students are children.
Well, no,
so-
she asked me about students. I said I didn't know how that looks. I said that would be a
Heard
discussion.
you. My statement is that I am not comfortable having students come together at the board's direction to discuss issues surrounding sex and
Madam
sexuality.
Chair, point of order, because we have already said we're going to workshop it.
I'm taking care of it right now, thank you. We're going to have that discussion, it's an important discussion. And let's just hold thoughts on that until we get to the point where we have time for that discussion. Okay, other comments that you have?
Oh, okay, I'm finished. I'm not finished yet. I got one more. And then Guardian Program update. I know that Ms. Patrica brought this up recently, and I want to bring it back around for a conversation. I did reach out to actually Ray Rodriguez, and the state gave $6.5 million to the Guardian Program. And so I would like to have another conversation. Maybe we can put that on the parking lot agenda about the enhancement of our SRO program through going after that, especially since it's budget time. This would be a perfect time to have a discussion about how we can enhance that. I know there's several charter schools that would rather have a guardian, and that's more suitable for them financially, and they have approached me about it, and I know there's other schools that would be interested in that as well. So there's money that I just don't want to see left on the table. So ever how we can, I would love to talk about that more.
Okay.
So does this board have that appetite?
And does that conclude your comments?
Yes, but I'm asking a question.
Yeah, it's a parking lot. We discussed
Parking
it.
lot.
at work.
Okay, thank you. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Mrs. Patrica.
Just graduations, that's really all I have to talk about. It was phenomenal to be at Buckingham Exceptional Student Center. I would like to publicly say that my son will be attending South next year, so I hope you'll offer me the grace going forward, Ms. Giovanelli, of allowing me to attend the South graduation. Just, in years future, I'd like you to start considering that, please. Ms. Jordan's always been really good about letting me do Dunbar. I did Dunbar Sunday night. Mr. Burnside is incredibly fastidious about the appearance of the students and the conduct of the students during the graduations. He has the biggest box of ties I have ever seen in my entire life. And he is so serious about it that he made a kid who was wearing a turtleneck wear a tie. Whereas Ms. Stillwell's not here. But he literally walked across the stage in a turtleneck and a bow tie because he wouldn't let him do the turtleneck without the tie. I thought it was hysterical. But the ceremony was beautiful. As always, the kids were incredibly well behaved, and they earned their right to throw their caps. So I thought that was really fantastic. I've never seen anything like Buckingham. I mean, those kids there were probably, I don't know, maybe 10 of them that were graduating, and it took as long as a regular graduation. And each kid, like the first kid that came down to take her position, waved the whole time. She just waved the whole time. It was really cool. And that's really the time of year that I smile the most. My face hurts at the end of a graduation because I'm smiling the entire time. So I'm always very grateful to be able to be a part of that. And the other thing I'll report to the board is I had a town hall meeting last night. That's why I had to run out of here as quickly as I did. And it was an interesting collection of people. I think a lot of them were there to gather real information. And some of them were there to create, 30-second YouTube videos of me that they can put out in public and try to make me look bad. But there were about 60 people there, I would say. And on balance, I think it went pretty well because there were people who were genuinely interested in the issues. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is it on what Ms. Patrica said?
Yes.
Okay.
What was the topic of your town hall meeting?
Any question you have, I will try to answer it.
Oh.
And almost every question was about LGBT and CRT. And that's why I brought critical race theory up today, because of what's happening in Collier. And I'd like that actually to be a parking lot issue that we discuss, please.
Okay, Mrs. Gittens?
Oh, okay. Graduations were fun as usual. Riverdale had the largest number of graduates, and it was Dr. Atkins and I told him he was going out in a big way, having the biggest one, but I just thought, you know how you look in the back of the room and follow the rows?
Yep.
I couldn't even see the back of the building at the rows, and I'm thinking, okay, we're almost there, but it wasn't. So, but it was really great, and so it was Dr. Atkins and I, and we had a good time with that one. Lehigh Senior I did on Sunday, and that was great. And you'll probably see some pictures of the shoes. The shoes were absolutely incredible. These girls were walking across in stilettos across the stage, and I thought if they could just make it from here to there, we'll be all right. One I had to kind of reach out and catch, but it was fun. And I think the funniest was there were two guys that came across, and the one guy gets his diploma, the case, because they give them the diploma later. So he gets it from the principal, and he stopped before he got to the rest of us, and he looked in there, and he's just shaking his head like, now there's nothing in it. But he was so amazed that he was on this stage and at least had the cover. It was hysterical, but it was a lot of fun. And The one with Lehigh Senior, I was with Dr. Desamore, and it was funny because she said, well, this is kind of bittersweet for me because last year she had a student that graduated, but because of COVID, they couldn't walk. So, she was like, oh, this should have been last year. So we comforted her in that. On the Buckingham one, I think everyone during your time on the board needs to do the Buckingham graduation because it really shows you what we're here and what it's all about. And when you understand that some of those students have been there for many, many years and they have actually aged out, and the parents are just like, okay, this is our life, and has been so for some of them like 20 years. And it just really is touching to watch them. And yes, they dance and wave the whole time. I wanted to mention that Dr. Ann Murphy Knight passed away a week or so ago, and they had her services on the weekend. And as an educator and a contributor to our community and to the district, I asked the chair if we could do a short just tribute to her. And she agreed that we will do it right after before the public comment. Some of her family will be here. They're from out of town, so they will be here this evening. And it's just a short thing that together with Jared Eady and his historical self, he wrote some things, and I'll just read through it real quick and recognize the family. She has a very long history with the district, and even helping to name some of the schools and all that, and you'll hear that this evening. So I just wanted to let everyone know that, and thank you. I think that's it for now.
Thank you. We have of course, just as I'm about to speak, I get frog. No, she.
What? Oh, she went already?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm lost.
Did you go already?
Everybody has gone.
Okay.
Sorry, Betsy.
She's
Forgot
froggy.
again, Betsy?
She's froggy again.
You forget again?
You better keep an eye on her.
Okay. Attorney DeFreeburg, no, yes.
Thank you. Based on the discussion and the question that was posed, as well as by Ms.
I barely
Giovanelli,
hear you. Is your mic on?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me now? I need to bring it closer.
Sorta.
Okay, so based on the discussion and the question that was raised by Ms. Giovanelli and the question that was raised by Ms. Morgan in terms of the timing for the code of conduct, in reviewing the statute, it just simply says that it needs to be completed at the beginning of every school year. So if I may, during this break, let me talk to staff just to see if there's any time between now and the beginning of the school year to review it one more time. Because there really isn't any rush, and I want to make sure that the board is satisfied with the document. I still maintain my position that the parental bill of rights does not belong in the code of conduct, because the code of conduct is only about discipline and the conduct of students, but there's no rush. Let's make sure we get it right this time.
May I make a quick comment on
Yeah.
that? If you do find that that's the case and we are going to postpone it, I say that we need to put a blast out to let the public know that that will be the case for tonight.
I have to talk to staff first, because it's
Right.
not just, because we still have to do the rulemaking process. In addition, staff needs to do whatever the translations that need to be done. There's some other administrative steps that will go along with that. So before I say we can, I want to make sure that this timeline will be appropriate for staff.
That's fine. I'm just saying we need to blast it out, let the community know that.
Okay, Ms. Patrica, you had a question?
Yes, so, Attorney DePree-Bruno, page 13, notification of parental rights. So I hear what you're saying about the purpose of the code of conduct, but we currently have a statement in here of parental rights. We have a statement in here of student rights as well, so.
Not as long as what the statute's going to be. I mean.
Sorry?
I'm thinking about the length of the statute and the policy. That's what I'm thinking about.
But if we're going to delay this and we're going to put parental student rights in a separate policy, or I'm sorry, parental rights in a separate policy, then why would we have it in the student code of conduct if it's not complete and in whole compliance with the new law that's been passed, right? I'm just raising that as an issue for you to please take a look at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? Yes.
Yeah, so the compliance is really, it's important because I'm not all of our policies are in compliance with the law, so that's really important. Second, I want to make sure that we started to talk about it in our protocols today and everything, our evaluation, but we didn't get to that really, that I don't think we do talk about policies enough and making sure they're compliant. One was the situation, again, regarding my husband, our policy didn't comply with the law. So, and I brought it up several times, and nobody wants to have that appetite, don't have the appetite for that, to change that policy. But also, I know there was changes to the code of conduct, right? No, our policy wasn't regarding that. It wasn't.
And it's not now.
No, that we've never changed the policy from that situation. And I brought it up.
Policies have
So,
to be.
so the issue that you're referring to is the ability of law enforcement from another agency to bring a weapon into a school board property. That's a whole nother issue.
Right.
With different laws.
But some school districts have the law in there regarding, as long as their employer allows for that, which was my husband's case. But our policy doesn't state that. Our policy is too generic. That's what raised the question to begin with.
Okay.
But I just want to get back to the changes being made to the code of conduct. That's been changed for us to look at and see the changes, because I haven't had a chance to.
So in my understanding, between last night and today, staff reviewed the code of conduct and did some changes to it. I have not had an opportunity to review all the changes myself.
Right.
But that's my understanding based on the conversation yesterday.
Can I fill in a detail there? Can I fill in a detail?
Yes, please.
Ms. Stillwell emailed all of us the changes. I was under the impression that, so the conversation I had with you at the break was inaccurate. I was under the impression when I received the email from Ms. Schaefer that it had been updated in board docs. It has not yet been updated in board docs. They're waiting for your review to update it, your review, Attorney Dupree Bruno, to update it. Am I right? You can speak, Ms. Schaefer.
Yeah.
Actually, there were no changes to the code of conduct on the agenda as of yet.
Right.
The items that you received notification for were for the briefing and then the 2 good causes.
Well, okay, so it brought me there for the good causes, that's why.
Right.
Okay, so I thought it brought me there for the student code of conduct, and so I went through the student code of conduct, and I was really frustrated. I was like, they didn't change any of them. And that's why I was really frustrated, because it was the old code of conduct. So Attorney Dupree Bruno, as soon as you review those changes, they are going to post it to board docs unless and until you get different answers to the questions that have been raised. So you're going to be busy in the next hour and 40.
So is that proper notice for the community? That's my question.
So how I would like to end this conversation is to please allow some time for me to talk to staff to see what the possibilities are, because I haven't had an opportunity to review this document from whenever it was revised till when it was sent to me.
And nor have we either.
Okay, and what I would suggest is that our attorney talk to staff about that, and my opinion would be that unless there's something that some reason that it would mess up everything in terms of getting that code approved, I know I have not had a chance to look at because we were changing quite a few of the pronouns, and there were some pronouns that we were turning back into nouns or possessive nouns, and I certainly would like to have a chance to review that as well, and the public deserves a chance to look at the final, I guess you could say. So, Attorney Dupree Bruno, you'll be able to talk with staff?
If you can make sure I get a copy of it, because I don't see it. Thanks.
And can I say,
Well,
we
wait a minute,
received
wait.
our copy.
Hang on one minute.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. The documents that I have are the updated code of conduct, and then there is an actual document that shows what was updated. It shows the new and the old, so that would be attached as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
And yes, Ms. Gittens.
What I'm saying is, I know I received it while we were here on the dais. So that does really not give us time to review anything.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly what I was just saying, that unless there's some extenuating circumstance, that perhaps it can be pulled for this evening and giving everybody, both the community and those of us on the board, a chance to look at it, because we haven't seen it yet either. Is there anything else about that particular issue? Okay, well, I haven't given my board member comments yet, but we'll come back to Ms. Dupree-Bruno in a few minutes for her official comments. Okay, so in a note, I have written down the code, if depending on what is decided on this, something that I would like to see that I actually sent on through the proper channels, Dr. Atkins and Mr. Mangan and Chuck Bradley, was the possibility of part of that really, really long document being made into hyperlinks, because there are some things, there's maybe the Cliff's Notes version or the abridged version, but sometimes when there's too much all there in front of somebody, it just bogs the reader down. So my thought, which was just an idea that popped into my head, came very late. So it's just, for me, it's something to think about for the future on these documents that we're sending digitally to the different homes, that perhaps some of the things, and that would include, for instance, when, well, the parental bill of rights, if we were to approve this tonight, we might even, instead of having to have an addendum, that we have a hyperlink to it. And there, it seems to me there's some other items that go into great detail, which is great for transparency, but probably the vast majority of the students and the parents and the shareholders, unless a particular situation applies to them, they might not even care to read through, but they would have the ability to read through. So that's just something for the future. Another thing, I was really glad that Mrs. Morgan brought up the issue of the non-renewed effective and highly effective teachers, because I've had a few people reach out to me and talk about that. And something like that to a teacher, when you're effective or highly effective, and you're used to being in a particular school and it's your home school, and all of a sudden you're told, no, we're not going to renew you at this site. That's very demoralizing to have come up as a very effective teacher, and then all of a sudden it's a punch. Talk about a punch in the gut. It is, and those kinds of things, to my way of thinking, have the effect. It's not just affecting that one teacher, because don't you know, the word gets out. Did you hear what happened to Susie Jones? Susie's been a wonderful teacher here, but she's not getting renewed. at our school, and she's going to have to find a job somewhere else. So my thought is we work really hard in HR to recruit, but issues like this make me think personally that we're not doing all that we can to retain. And again, it's not just the one person, because the word gets out and a lot of people are saying, that's not right. Before I give the several little positive things I have, I did also have a question. It was the one that I was going to ask yesterday at the end of the workshop, and everybody was so excited that I forgot what it was. But it took me only an hour to remember it. You know who you are, those of you who rejoice because I couldn't think of it. But it's...
Oh, darn.
But it is who is responsible for making the updates to our page about the superintendent search on our website. Now, okay, and I know you've been in charge of that, but could you explain to us, I mean, there were a lot of things over the weekend, and I emailed, because I honestly did not know if that was still not your baby to do the actual changes, or how is that working right now, Mrs. Gittens? Because we need to be able to do a better job of keeping everything up to date.
Okay, and I am in constant contact between Ms. Stillwell and, goodness, I just lost her name, Laura, because, and one of the things, I asked them a couple of questions, and things are changing, and I asked about the list and removing people and updating it. But what the staff suggested they felt was better was to leave all 5 names and then to put either withdrawn or, still in the running or whatever, so that, we didn't just delete someone off of there. So that was a discussion that we had, and that was how they felt it was best to handle it. And yes, we do keep the calendar piece updated, and I believe they will put the interview, the links to the interview, if they're not already on there, will be on there. And I'm not sure what you're saying is not up to date.
Okay, no, I was checking it this weekend, and there were a lot of things that weren't up to date. Actually, on Friday, this past Friday, and Ms. Stillwell made a change, but then we still had that list, and I agree, that's...
But the purpose was to leave it up there, so...
I'm not done yet.
Okay, sorry.
I agree with what you said, leave the list up there, but to add the comments that you thought, and they thought would be applicable, withdrawn. The bottom line is we've had a lot of changes in that, and we've gotten some criticism from the public, and I think it's very legitimate criticism when we don't have that page up to date. And I'm not trying to point a finger, I'm not trying to blame anybody. We are all super, super busy. However, it is what it is, and it's there. And
it is okay, it is up to date though, and they constantly do make the changes to it as we are going, through our process. The only thing as of Friday that would have needed to be done was updating the list and making sure the calendar was where it was supposed to be.
Well, okay, well, there were still 2 dates for interviews and numerous things. I'm going to ask, do you need help on?
No, I'm fine. And
I'm not asking that in a derogatory way. It's a big job, and there are a lot of moving parts.
I'm fine, and the thing is, I'm working with staff to make sure that everything is up to date.
Okay.
But thank you for the offer.
Yeah, and again, I'm not casting dispersions on anyone. I personally just want to see it remain up to date. Okay, most all of these things have been mentioned already. The awards, although I love, a couple years ago, the first time I'd ever seen the Student Film Awards going, and it was like a Hollywood premiere, and it was done so well, and that was really fun. I'll have to say that pulling up the YouTube at my TV at home and sitting back, it was at 7 o'clock, and having dinner in front of the TV watching was also a good experience. And as usual, it was a phenomenal job. It's amazing what some of these little kids can do. Fifth or sixth graders, I'm thinking, how'd they do that? Anyway, it's on YouTube, so just look for the Student Film Awards, and it definitely is worth a watch. Like all my colleagues, I went to a couple graduations this weekend as well. Went to Sunday morning, Gateway Charter High School, and on Saturday afternoon went to Estera High School, which that's kind of my home high school since I used to teach there. And a highlight for me was that two of my good friends that teach at Estero, their daughters were graduating. So I got to be up close and personal when my two good friends came up on the stage and handed their daughters their diplomas, and I'm sure all the schools do that, and that's a very, very touching thing when the parent is able to do that. And in terms of, I really appreciated what Mrs. Patrica said about Mr. Burnside, because I go way back with graduations and actually even being a senior class sponsor. And just a real quick thing on that. Back in the day at my high school, if you can believe it, all you young men out there listening to this, boys weren't allowed to wear earrings back in the day. So I'm thinking this was the late 80s, early 90s. And so they weren't allowed in high school to wear the earrings. And don't you know, we had, those of us helping in the lines, we had to look at those boys' ears, and I'm serious, and take out your earrings. And finally, there was a year when the principal decided, it's not that big a deal. And they'd kind of, the kids would kind of be like this to cover up that they had the earrings, and oh, it's fine. And including the ties, that there had to be, everybody had to wear black shoes, and there were some phenomenal pretty sparkly heels on the girls, and I mean, beautiful shoes, but yeah, at least I didn't see anybody with, like they do in college, with taped messages like, "Hi, Mom," or something, or worse on there. So the graduations are always really fun. And many of us will be heading to Tampa either tonight or tomorrow. And one of our board members will be honored with being, now see, I can't think of the word. She's going to be, Miss Patrica is going to be the president of FSBA. You're being, what's the word? Sworn in. You know what? I was thinking of words like inaugurated, and I even thought the word crowned. I don't know why, but congratulations to you, and some of us will be there.
Thank you.
To see the coronation. had to. So that's the end of my comments. Ms. DePree-Bruno, do you have any other comments?
So during your board comment, I had a chance to take a look at my email again.
Aha. I planned it that way, so you'd have
I
plenty of
guess
time.
we could say you're welcome.
You weren't hanging on Ms. Vaughn's every word?
I heard everything that she said.
I can tell you a couple more
multitask.
graduation stories about the time after Dracula. This is important. After Dracula was a banned book at our school, there was a big deal, newspapers and all of that. Guess what happened at graduation at University of North Texas Stadium? Guess what flew in the air?
A bat.
A bat. Yes, that was the kind of graduations we had in Texas with 1 year a bat flying around. All right.
So I did get the, Ms. Schaefer, I did get the updates to the code while we were on the dais, and actually responded and asked if there was any substantive changes, but I did not have a chance to review it. So I will review it based on what I've seen so far. It seems like it's more grammatical changes than substance. But I'm going to send this to the board as well for you to review and make sure that these changes are acceptable to you. And if you can take a look at it and provide your thoughts directly to me, not to the board, that would be helpful in terms of how we proceed. And with regards to the parents' rights, there is the parental notification, but we could put something in there that talks about the board policy on the parents' rights, which is going to be more comprehensive based on the law, if that's acceptable to the board. We can put in there.
Are we good?
Is that okay?
Thumbs up. Are we good with that?
Once more, then.
So there is a section that just talks about notification of parents' rights, and it's been there for a long time. It's not reflective, obviously, of the statute, but we can put a sentence in there that basically just says that the board has a policy in line with the parental rights statute.
But we don't have a policy yet.
Are we good with that?
We will have a policy between July and August.
By the school start.
By the time this starts, yeah. So if that's acceptable, I think we can move forward.
So may I just ask, if we vote on it tonight and make those changes later, then that's sufficient legally?
Repeat what you said, Ms. Gittens, if we vote on it tonight and make
If we were to vote on it tonight and then those changes are made afterwards, are we legally okay to do that? Or do we need to word it differently as to what we're voting for in light of amendments coming up?
Well, unless the board, when you look at it during the break, feels that there's additional things you want to change, it appears based on what I've been able to review thus far that these are more grammatical changes, not substantive changes. So that's the first thing. With regards to the Parental Bill of Rights, that's going to be a policy sometime between July and August because it has to be based on the statute. So we will have a policy, but there was a question as to whether or not we should put that in the Student Code of Conduct, which I think is just, it's going to be long. So in lieu of putting that in the Student Code of Conduct, we can just put a sentence that says that the board has a policy that specifically addresses the Parental Bill of Rights. We already have something in there that talks about notification of parental rights that has a few little subheadings in terms of access to educational records and things like that. We can just add that sentence and that probably would cover it. Unless the board wants something that's more substantive, then you'll have to wait until the actual policy is drafted and then pick what you actually want to put in the Student Code of Conduct.
My concern is the public and the information and emails and questions and calls and texts that I've got. They're not going to be okay with just saying we're going to do something. By the responses that I have gotten. So my suggestion would be to put in there exactly what we're going to have to show them that this is in there. That you do still have the rights. So, I mean, that's just me. I don't know. So, it's up to everybody else.
So let me go back then to what I said originally. Let me talk to staff and see if there's a timing issue. And then my second would be to add that sentence that just refers to the parental bill of rights. We can even make it as simple as the district will follow the parental bill of rights upon its effective date or something like that. I mean, there's some language that we can put in there, or the policy.
And if we get to the point where we are going to do it tonight, then you need to explain that very, very carefully and clearly.
So before we make that decision, please make sure that you review the changes and ensure that those changes are acceptable to you. If they are not acceptable, please let me know. And then I will also talk to staff in terms of timing.
Well, and also keep in mind that this is not a consent item, that this is a separate item which allows the public to speak once again, which actually gives you, Attorney Bruno, and all of us a chance to say that we've not forgotten about this, and also to listen if there are enough negative comments or not trusting, or it doesn't seem like it's working, to make that consideration. Okay, Mrs. Patrica, you had a comment?
I'm just wondering when is it going to be posted? Right. In board docs? Because I've got a system of how I go through it, and I go through it based on that document that's in Word docs, and what I got from staff is confusing to my brain. So I want to be able to go through it the way I go through it. Do we know?
We have to.
Okay, as soon as I get notification, either way, I will make the change. It won't be anything that should take very long. Again, it depends on staff and if they have to make any other changes to the documents. But otherwise, it will take me just a couple minutes to do it.
Mr. Pre-Bruno, could you just, it sounds like with everybody, the conversation we're having right now, could you just check with staff to see if we can postpone this?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just...
Yeah, I agree with what you said.
Doesn't the vote have to occur a specific number of days after the second reading?
Yes, it does. That's why we're going to have to go through the
can.
rulemaking process again. That's why I have to check with staff in terms of timing.
I don't think we can.
Because you have to go through the whole process again.
All right, let me just bring, and I'll come back to you in a moment.
This is supposed to be.
It sounds like there are a lot of people that, a lot of people here on the dais, that unless it's going to cause a huge problem, that we just delay it so that all of us feel like we've had ample opportunity to look at it, to go through it in whatever way our personal learning style desires. So,
Madam Vice Chair, I actually did just get some information from staff that says really we can't postpone it because in addition to the rulemaking time that we would have, we have branding and printing, translation, and all of that needs to be done too. So this will be cutting it very close.
okay, and Ms. Gittens?
Okay, here's what I would like to suggest, and it sounds as though statutorily and everything that we really, and time-wise, that it's going to go on. We talked about singing off the same page and saying the same thing and making sure we have the same message. I'm sending to you guys a couple of questions. I'm sending it to Attorney Bruno and the superintendent. I would like to have an answer to these questions. For one, these are questions that I get all the time. I want to make sure I'm saying what everybody else is saying. So, for example, will students of different sex be allowed to use the same restroom? I would like for staff and the superintendent and the attorney and the legal manner to give us an answer. Not a long drawn out, but here is basically what we are saying. Because, I know what I might say, but I don't know if it's the same thing that everyone is saying. And if we're going to be singing off the same page, then we need to at least see that. Another question was, will parents not be informed if the child or child's teacher or educator talks to them about their preference. We just need a solid answer that we all agree upon that is saying this is where the district stands. Another one is what is the sex education curriculum being taught in elementary, middle, and high school to students? I know the answer is we don't, but we need to have the official answer so that when we are speaking off of the same page. And if anyone else has any other questions to add to that, it would help me. I don't know if it would help anybody else, but I don't want to be out of sync with everyone else in issues like this. So.
Are there any more comments? Yes, Ms. Morgan.
It sounds like what we need is a frequently asked questions section on the website so that the public and we all have the same answers to the questions. And maybe what we need to do is figure out a way to, with communications, to put up a frequently asked question and put these questions out there. And then it's, anyway.
Knows, because there are a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, and no, you're right. Actually, I was thinking FAQs when Ms. Gittens was speaking, and I'm not sure why there is exactly this these misconceptions, because certainly we have said from the dais numerous times, not just from one or two of us, but basically from all of us. I'm going to say that in part there seems to be social media and other messages totally apart from the board or the school district that continue to go out and continue to stir up these questions. So we just need to continue to find better and better ways to get the message out and have an FAQ page. Don't we? Actually, I think we have an FAQ, do we not, on the district website? It's not about the code of conduct, but it's about facts on the district?
It's probably, yeah, there's facts on the district, but maybe this needs to be, you know.
I don't want to be rude, but we all got to review this thing before our meeting starts at 6 o'clock.
Yes, we do.
The attorney has work to do, and Jen has, Ms. Fisher,
So
Ms. Fisher,
we've
Ms. Schaefer has
contemplated-
work to do, so.
You're absolutely right. We've contemplated this. Let's go contemplate individually. It is 4:50. We're adjourned. See you at 6 o'clock when Ms. Jordan is the chair.
After public comment, because
Okay.
we've got an early morning FSBA meeting. I can't be on the road. Midnight.